behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification. And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression.
Vladimir Putin believes sincerely that he has a historic claim to parts of not Eastern, Western Ukraine? Is that a misspeak? Or is this motherfucker on crack cocaine? Oh my Lord.
Of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia.
Dude, I've seen Vladimir Putin in such limited ways that immediately when I see him in a situation like this, my mind goes to that TikTok Vladimir Putin that's always like hitting the nuclear button on the White House, like dancing with the skibbity dope guy. Like, it feels like it's not real. It feels like he's not the guy. That this is the Vladimir Putin impersonator that's going to start dancing. You know what I'm talking about? You have to know the Vladimir Putin body double guy, like,
out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable series.
Oh my God. He is sucking on the pee-pee, dude. Yo! Yo! Oh, God. Yo! Oh, Jesus Christ.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862, when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince.
Bro, are you for real, dude? Are you for really real? That's insane that we are. Bro, he's like, let me tell you how we were a gas cloud, okay? Let me tell you about the Big Bang. You can't just, dude, he's doing Russ lore dumps.
Rurik from Scandinavia to reign. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood.
Oh my God, he's literally doing Israel. Oh my God, he's doing Netanyahu Israel shit. It's so funny. Oh God, this is why I love like Ukrainian flag, Israeli flag in the bio guys who just like don't realize that what Vladimir Putin is doing is literally like, it's Israel shit.
And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's younger son, because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev. He ousted two brothers who
He's doing that because Ukraine is stealing Russian history live. He has to explain why it's wrong.
apparently had once been members
Yeah, the Russian claimed that the Kievan Rus were Russian. By that logic, Ukraine can claim Russia too. Turn it into a real... Why do you keep comparing Russia to Israel? What the fuck? First of all, are you familiar with both of these countries? Fuck you mean? Comparing Russia to Israel is definitely not out of pocket at all. Okay? Also, Russia and Israel have a pretty solid relationship, despite the fact that Vladimir Putin is always like, oh yeah, I love Palestinians. Like, you know, a lot of Russians in Israel. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, he's literally doing like lore dumps and Russian mythology to justify his irredentist actions in Ukraine. Why do you keep comparing Russia to Israel? What the fuck? I'm Palestinian. Okay. So? He has no real nationalist, like, look, if you talk about being genuinely afraid of NATO or wanting to put forward a red line as a matter of national security, as a foreign adversary, that's one argument. If you make irredentist claims with like lore dumps about why you should actually invade Ukraine and take it over, because technically, you know, that's your land, all right? Then yeah, you're doing directly IDF playbook shit. You're doing Israel propaganda to a T.
members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne. But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons.
Okay.
The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state. There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe. But the fragmented Russian state became an easy prey to
Connor, this is the stuff that American media doesn't want you to know, I guess. Yeah, incredibly boring, convoluted arguments that don't make any fucking sense unless you're like completely one-sided on the issue. Like, this is what my fucking haters think I'm making a claim on like Taiwan with respect to China. Like, this is what they think I'm saying. When I talk about like Taiwan's historical significance or its inception, while still maintaining the position that if they truly want autonomy, then they deserve it. But I completely understand where the Chinese position comes from as far as like their own security interests, okay? As America utilizes Taiwan as like a weapon against their foreign adversary, wields Taiwan and Taiwanese independence as a weapon against their foreign adversary, and why most people in Taiwan, while they do want independence, understand that the current order of business of economic cooperation is significantly better than anything else. This is what they think I mean when I talk about all this shit. They think I'm saying like, well, Taiwan is Chinese, and therefore it belongs to mainland China. Was the U.S. not doing that in Ukraine? Not saying that the invasion was justified? No, the U.S.'s utilization of Ukraine against Russia and claiming that they were going to bring Ukraine into NATO when they weren't actually ever really interested in bringing them into NATO, okay, is a way to inflame the tensions. But the goal is not to eat the bait, especially after you have already annexed Crimea. Anyway,
The empire created earlier by King Hasan. His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed.
I'm precogging him blaming Ukraine's existence on Lenin. I mean, it's not, he's blamed Lenin before for
to
it.
preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands.
That's wrong. The U.S. was never reluctant to bring Ukraine into NATO. Quite the contrary. Yeah, no, that's why Ukraine is currently in NATO and Article 5 was implemented, and that's why there's American troops currently fighting in a direct hot war with Russia. You're right. No, totally. When George W. Bush said we're going to bring Georgia and Ukraine into NATO on his way out in like the last month of his presidency, basically, that was and fuck Russia's red lines on that matter. That totally was real and valid, you know. Dog, for NATO to operate, you still need cooperation from European states to also vote in for new members. That even includes like ridiculous guys like Turkey, Erdogan, which are still easy to control, as Erdogan has also chirped about Sweden and Finland and then capitulated immediately. Okay. But the notion that they were going to not take seriously Russia's red lines and actually put Ukraine into NATO, fast track Ukraine into NATO, was always a ridiculous argument. The Russian argument would just be that the invasion was to prevent Ukraine joining NATO, except Ukraine wasn't joining NATO regardless because they had already successfully annexed Crimea,
including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate.
By the way, none of what we just talked about, everything that we just talked about is related to, obviously, Russia's invasion of Ukraine and why it's unjustifiable. And none of what Vladimir Putin has talked about so far is even, in my opinion, remotely related to them invading Ukraine. Unless, as liberals have clearly fucking stated time and time again in their Yaponomics sessions, that Vladimir Putin is irredentist, Vladimir Putin is imperialist, Vladimir Putin does want Ukraine, and he's basically saying, yeah, no, I do actually. They weren't lying. On God, I want Ukraine. I'm so horny for Ukraine.
Towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population. They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state.
Vladimir Putin. He is yap-maxing.
During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians.
Ukraine wasn't joining NATO anyway because there was a war in the east and in occupied areas, which literally stops it becoming a member state. Until that's resolved. It couldn't join since 2014. So claiming it will join in 2022 is just a justification as a pure lie. No, I know that. I recognize that, which is why I'm saying that it was ridiculous that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine to begin with. And I'm also following up on that and saying that it's also gross on the Western side that they kept selling this tall tale to the Ukrainian population. They were like, come on, go die, go die, go die in defense of Ukraine. We're going to get you, we're going to put, we're leading up to the last invasion. They were like, no, trust me, we're so gonna give you NATO. You're gonna be in NATO. Please, I promise you're gonna be in NATO. It's bullshit. Why do you think he invaded Ukraine other than to keep their market and economy in the Russian market and prevent it becoming a EU subsidiary? I think he invaded Ukraine because he's a fucking, he very openly is stating it. He's a fucking idiot who personally thought that this would be the most effective way of dealing with any kind of Western involvement that Ukraine would have. Any kind of Western involvement that Ukraine would have, he would be able to like cut short. I also personally think that he greatly overestimated the air superiority that they would have. That's what I think. I think he thought we have air superiority, we'll overtake it, which was stupid from the jump. Like, it was always stupid. And I, as much as people say I'm a fucking Vladimir Putin dick rider, I stated very clearly, even before Russia invaded Ukraine and certainly after, that it was virtually impossible for the Russian military to permanently annex a country whose national identity is quite literally comprised, like the basic fundamentals of being a Ukrainian is about not being Russian, okay? Is about literally, even in certain instances, basically fucking aligning with the Nazis like Bandera to not be Russian. 44 million people used to live in Ukraine before the invasion, okay? Their entire nationalist identity is comprised of not being Russian. There is no fucking shot. There is no shot that they were going to be able to permanently annex, especially the Western areas, okay? Most analysts agree. Everyone overemphasizes the effectiveness of Russia's massive air force, coupled with the fact that Russian strikes on the first days failed to destroy Ukraine's air defenses. Yeah. It's stupid. It was stupid. Why? Because Ukraine was fully supplied and filled with all different weapons? No, it was always stupid because it was impossible to permanently annex. It was impossible to permanently annex a country like that. Counterinsurgent. Guys, look at fucking Gaza. Look at Gaza and Israel. Israel has a infinitely stronger military force with so much better weapons. And they, over the course of the past couple of months, have lost more military members in fucking Gaza than they did against fucking Lebanon over the course of years. Okay? Do you understand how devastating that shit is? You cannot do a fucking counterinsurgency in an urban environment against a population that has nowhere else to go and is going to fight tooth and fucking nail. This is no longer like war is no longer like, oh, you get your legionnaires out there, they get their legionnaires and you fucking fight in the open field. And then the rest is just peasantry that you roll over with your cavalry. And then now it's your territory. It doesn't work like that anymore. Okay. You got fucking dudes buying drones off of Alibaba and dropping grenades on top of like Russian military positions while filming it and posting it on fucking subreddits. Like, what are we talking about? There is as much advancement as we've seen in the field of modern war. There's also a democratization effect in the form of like Bayraktars, for example. Anyway. Like, think about Vietnam. Think about Afghanistan 1. Think about Afghanistan 2. Afghanistan 1 with the USSR. Afghanistan 2 with the United States of America. It's just like, it seems that people don't understand. They think like, no, my dad can beat up your dad. My dad's dick is bigger than your dad's dick. And that's how things work. If that's how things work, then America would literally, you know, America would have built one massive McDonald's on Afghanistan and called it a fucking day. Anyway. It's ridiculous. Wait, what did you say? The live stream I was watching just went down on YouTube, so you'd probably be next. Wait, why? This is not like, this is perfectly valid to watch. That's ridiculous. What? Anyway, let's continue.
Занимается
Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that the person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service. It didn't mean any particular ethnic group. So the Poles were trying to, in every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period, I'm losing track of where in history we are, the Polish oppression of Ukraine?
It was in the 13th century. Now I will tell you what happened later and give the dates so that there is no confusion. And in 1654, even a bit earlier, the people who were in control of the authority over that part of the Russian lands addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so that Moscow took them away. So that you don't think that I'm inventing things, I'll give you these documents.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened.
Bro, he's like, he has to fake it so hard. Dude, he fakes it harder than Chat's mom every night. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you brought a document. Or maybe he thinks the document is like laced or something.
But still, these are documents from the archives, copies. Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky, the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands that is now called Ukraine. He wrote to Warsaw demanding that their rights be upheld. And after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation into Russian. You can translate it into English later. Russia would not agree to admit them straight away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar, which was the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom. As expected, the war with Poland began. It lasted 13 years, and then in 1654...
I like what he's doing. I think we should... when all else fails, you can always blame Poland. Okay? And, you know, that's not the worst idea.
A truce was concluded. And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland, which they called Eternal Peace, was signed. And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kiev, went to Russia. And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in Poland. Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west. This all lasted until the revolution.
For the record, like, I not to be super libbed up here, but this is one area where liberals are vindicated when they talk about like how, oh, he's just like a Duginist. He's like repeating Alexander Dugin. But if this is a justification for invading Ukraine, then yes, the liberals are actually correct that this is just simply pure irredentist action that that he believes is justified due to the historical reasons as to why Ukraine is actually a part of Russia.
Before World War,
this is straight up blood and soil shit.
For one, Austrian General Staff relied on the ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization. Their motive was obvious. Just before World War I, they wanted to weaken the potential enemy and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area. So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly not really Russians, but rather belonged to a special ethnic group, Ukrainians, started being propagated by the Austrian General Staff. As far back as the 19th century, theorists calling for Ukrainian independence appeared. All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very good relationship with Russia. They insisted on that. After the 1917 revolution,
Ukraine does not share culture with Russians? Of course it does, man. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, it's like, That's not. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that he can go and take it.
The Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood, and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland. In 1921, peace with Poland was proclaimed, and under that treaty, the right bank of Dnieper River once again was given back to Poland. In 1939, after Poland cooperated with Hitler, it did collaborate with Hitler, you know? Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship.
Israelis don't share culture with the Palestinians because they're from Europe? Yeah, dude, totally. Every Israeli's from Europe. What are you talking about, dude? There's hella fucking Arab Jews. So many people who are like technically pro-Palestinian literally don't understand a very important aspect of this, okay? No, there are a lot of Israeli people that are classified as Jewish and therefore not Arab, not seen as Arab in the eyes of the Israeli government, even though they're fucking Arab Jews, which means, yes, they do have a shit ton of shared culture. It's actually the majority too. So no, it's not Palestinian citizens of Israel either. I'm not talking about the 22% Arab Christians and Arab Muslims. I'm talking specifically about Arab Jews that are classified as Jewish, Mizrahi and Sephardi, especially Sephardi in Israel. Or yeah, Mizrahi and Sephardi, not Sephardi especially. Sorry, Mizrahi especially.
An alliance demanding in return that Poland give back to Germany the so-called Danzig corridor, which connected the bulk of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg. After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Dansk emerged. Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and engaged together in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
But may I ask you, you're making the case that Ukraine, certainly parts of Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, is in effect Russia has been for hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago? You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
Sure. I'll tell you. I'm coming to that. This briefing is coming to an end. It might be boring, but it explains many things.
Just don't know how it's relevant.
Good. Good. I'm so gratified that
Dude. Tucker said, come on, man, wrap it up, which is crazy. You can't say that. You cannot say, quit your yapping unless you are so... unless you are playing such a profoundly important role as like a Western mouthpiece for Russia, there's no shot you can get away with saying that to Vladimir Putin, I feel like. Bro, while Tucker Carlson's having this conversation, just so people understand, there are American journalists that are in prison. There are Russian journalists in prison in Russia. There are obviously real spies that are also American spies that are in prison in Russia as well. But like, there are people who should definitely not be in prison in Russia for the crime of doing actual journalism. Okay. There are also, I'm not talking about like fucking Paul Whelan. All right. Mr. Passport Aficionado. I'm talking like straight up the Wall Street Journal guy, for example. There's like, is the Wall Street Journal guy, the Evan Greer or whatever his name is, like that. There are dudes who are Evan Gershkovich. There are dudes who should not be in prison that are in prison in Russia for doing journalism, for literally doing what Tucker Carlson claims no one is doing in Russia. Okay? That I think is like pretty fucked up. Obviously, when you look at it from the perspective of like all the CNN journalists have like turned a blind eye to the death and destruction that fell upon every Arab journalist in the region since Israel decided to do ethnic cleansing, right? In Gaza, they're being kind of phony when they go, oh, look at all these journalists. But like, I'm not. I do think that you can't fucking prosecute journalists like that. Okay? You can't do that. You can't kill journalists like Israel's doing. You can't prosecute and criminalize journalism like Russia has done. It's fucked up.
You appreciate that. Thank you. So, before World War II, Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's
Yeah, we do it too, by the way. Yeah, of course. Of course we do it too. Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, and you know, Ukraine does a different version of this as well. Like, don't get me wrong, they do it too. Everybody does it, but I still think it's fucking wrong and bullshit.
demands, it still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went so far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom?
Turkey's jailing so many journalists. You say nothing about that. Yeah, I famously never talk about Erdogan being super fucking hardcore anti-freedom of speech. Yeah, that's why I go back to Turkey all the time, famously. That's why I don't have a famous story about writing for the Huffington Post about the Turkish coup and how, you know, I was threatened personally through an intermediary about not writing for Turkey at all. Thank you, though, chatter. Baram DD, Turkey's jailing so many journalists. You say nothing about that. What's next? Are you going to be like, oh, you never talk about the Armenian genocide, you fucking dumb piece of shit? Why are my fucking haters so goddamn stupid where they immediately go, he's Turkish. He would never fucking talk shit about Turkey. Suck my dick, dumbass. What have you done? What sacrifices have you made in your life? You know what I mean? I get fucking death threats on a goddamn basis for the shit that I say. How dare you? I can't even fucking go back to Turkey safely. And you're over here talking this big shit with no knowledge prior. How dare you? Fucking assholes, man. Address the allegations, bud. Yeah, okay. What's happening here? What are we doing? Top of the hour ad breaks? It's not top of the hour. It's middle of the hour.
The war started on 1st September 1939, Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland. By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved very honestly. It asked Poland's permission to transit its troops through the Polish territory to help Czechoslovakia. But the then Polish foreign minister said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed over the territory of Poland. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that the war began, and Poland fell prey to the policies it had pursued against Czechoslovakia, is under the well-known Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Part of the territory, including western Ukraine, was to be given to Russia. Thus, Russia, which was then named the USSR, regained...
There ain't no fucking way he's using Molotov-Ribbentrop as like as a good thing. Like, no shot, right? He's like, no, it was actually really good. Like, it was really chill when Nazi Germany gave the USSR Ukraine.
its historical lands. After the victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War II, all those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia, to the USSR. As for Poland, it received, apparently in compensation, the lands which had originally been German. The eastern parts of Germany, these are now western lands of Poland. Of course,
Centrist Jesus Charlie on an alt-right arc when it comes to not genociding Palestinians? What? Dude, come
Poland
on.
regained access to
Come
the
on.
Baltic
We're being serious right
Sea
now.
and Danzig,
Take a week off.
which was once again given its Polish name. So this was how this situation developed. In 1922, when the USSR was being established, the Bolsheviks started building the USSR.
Chat validates everything, dude. Come on, Hasan, you think Charles is going to talk about Palestinians? No. But I also didn't understand how you could be alt-right in defense of Israel. That's what I was like trying to comprehend what the fuck that person was saying. Don't validate him, Chad. Come on, that wasn't even good. You're saluting mid. When you salute mid, you want more mid. Did you buy this interview, lol? No, it's free.
And established the Soviet
The interview is free for all to watch because this is a profoundly important work of journalism, according to Tucker
with
Carlson. He
Ukraine,
wants
which
everybody
had
to
never
see it.
existed before.
Right.
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities. For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR. And again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established...
bro, he's like this one, shitting on Lenin while also hyping up Stalin, shitting on Lenin for like talking about Ukrainian autonomy while hyping up Stalin, while also being a rugged anti-communist. He hits like every wrong aspect of the story. He even talked about how Germany gave Ukraine to the USSR. So technically, like how Hitler gave Ukraine to the USSR, so it's technically theirs. It's like, what is he trying to do? He's trying to make a historical argument from literally all of the worst points that you can make. Do you think he's a Nazball? No, man. What are you talking about? He's just he's a hyper-nationalistic capitalist oligarch. The idea that he is like, even in any way, shape, or form. I talked about this before. The only reason why Vladimir Putin even remotely mentions the USSR in a relatively positive terms is because he, like a lot of Russian fucking boomers, does not give a shit about communism. Well, some Russian boomers might give a shit about communism, but he does not give a shit about communism. He is literally a fucking, he's a capitalist charlatan from the jump. He only cares about Russia having like this mythology of power, like a Russian empire. Okay? That's it. He just wants Russia to be a global superpower. And that is the only reason why he cares about the USSR. He does not care about the USSR. He is the reason why he is in power is because of the illegal dissolution of the USSR, which he participated in. Okay? He does not give a fuck about that beyond the actual legacy. There is no like ideological goals there. There's no agenda for any kind of like communist restoration project. He just cares about it as like it was a mighty power. It was a mighty power. It was a global superpower. It competed with the United States of America, and that's it. He wants to be to have a role in a multipolar world. That's it.
The Soviet Republic of Ukraine, some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine, and yet they were made part of that Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands...
Shitting on Lenin and supporting Stalin is the most basic stance. As you said, it should be the opposite, by the way. It should be promoting Stalin, or not promoting Stalin. It should be promoting Lenin and like criticizing Stalin for, you know, a lot of his mishandlings. And yet he does the exact opposite because he is not even remotely pro-socialist. It's not about socialism for him at all. There's no like ideological purpose beyond this restoration of the USSR outside of land ownership. But yeah, as you said, boomer capitalists and nationalists rule the country. Source M. Russian.
Lands returned to Russian Empire. That territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
In 1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region. At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is that Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, established Ukraine that way. For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR. And for unknown reasons, again, the Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization. It was not merely because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originating from Ukraine. Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not a bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of...
Is he saying like Russification was a good thing, was a good policy? Because it was not a good policy. It was actually objectively a bad policy. Like it didn't work. It failed. He's saying the opposite. I didn't understand. Maybe he was saying the opposite. He says that the Russification didn't happen. Oh, he said the Soviets did the opposite of Russification. Oh. Yeah, no, totally.
Of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine and that other nations?
He's complaining that Lenin preserved Ukraine. Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about like 2,000 years of like Kievan Rus or whatever, Kievan Rus or Ukrainian history and how it's actually Russian from the jump, then Russification should not even matter because they are Russian technically, right? Like, how are you going to maintain the position that both like there is no autonomous Ukrainian identity, they're all Russian, while simultaneously saying, well, Russification didn't really work, and it was actually all of the minority, or not minority, what is it, like secondary altkimlik in Turkish? We have this term in Turkey. I don't know what it's called. It's like your secondary identity, I guess. When you're like a former empire, you have a lot of ethnicities that are now Turkish or that are now Russian, but I guess technically they would have like a secondary ethnicity as well. Like that would not exist for Ukraine if they were already Russian. So it wouldn't matter what Lenin thought about.
Nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1654 borders. But given Stalin's time, so-called Stalin's regime, which as many claim saw numerous violations of human rights and violations of the rights of other states,
Wait, now he's shitting on Stalin?
One may say that they could claim back those lands of theirs while having no right to do that. It is at least understandable.
Have you told Viktor Orban that he can have part of Ukraine?
Never. I have never told him, not a single time. We have not even had any conversation on that, but I actually know for sure that Hungarians who live there wanted to get back to their historical land. Moreover, I would like to share a very interesting story with you. I digress. It's a
Bro, this is why I hate talking about Syria, but also hate talking about fucking Russia-Ukraine shit. Look. Putin making anti-Semitic conspiracies about Ukrainians instead of Jews. This guy, he's also a liar. Eastern Ukraine was anarcho-primitivist and part of the Hetmanate before the Muscovite settler colonials moved in under Catherine the Great. Actually, Russia is Ukrainian since Rus, since the first Rus was Kievan. Actually, according to this, Russia is Ukrainian since the first Rus was Kievan Rus. And now he's saying correct. Kiev was the origin of Orthodox civilization in Slavic lands. Moscow was a swamp then. Everyone is going into deep lore for no fucking reason, okay? Russia is Russia, Ukraine is Ukraine. That's it. Leave it as is. You don't have to get to like paradox gaming conspiracies and map making in the chat as you write out paragraphs. Unless you're Moldovan Mama Liga, in which case you are allowed because all of Russia belongs to Moldova. Everybody knows this. And except for Crimea, which belongs to Turkey. Everybody also knows this. Give Crimea back to the Tatars so it can be a part of the Turkish Khanate. Once again, the Golden Horde will rise up. As you guys know, I am an Islamist fundamentalist caliphate defender who wants to restore Sharia law globally, specifically in the United States of America, as a fifth column style infiltrator. And son of oligarchs, private jet lover. What else? Yeah, secretly a neo-Ottomanist as well. Let's continue.
Personal one. Somewhere in the early 80s, I went on a road trip in a car from then Leningrad across the Soviet Union through Kiev. Made a stop in Kiev.
Are you pretending that you disagree with your buddy Vladimir? I used to support you, but you politically have changed. I'll be careful falling down this rabbit hole. The commissioner of the EU has considered levying financial sanctions against Tucker Carlson to the extent he now has to watch the ad break at the top of the hour. Come on, dog. There's no top of the hour yet. That's bullshit. That doesn't count. It's fucking 3:46, brother. That's insane.
And then went to Western Ukraine.
Bro, we are 21 minutes in. This dude is like barely getting to fucking World War II. Is it true that you chartered a private jet to the Burbank airport just to go to Portos? It's true.
I went to the town of Beregovoye. And all the names of towns and villages there were in Russian and in the language I did not understand. In Hungarian, in Russian and in Hungarian. Not in Ukrainian, in Russian and in Hungarian. I was driving through some kind of village and there were men sitting next to the houses and they were wearing black three-piece suits and black cylinder hats. I asked, are they some kind of entertainers? I was told, no, they were not entertainers, they're Hungarians. I said, what are they doing here? What do you mean? This is their land, they live here. This was during the Soviet time in the 1980s. They preserved the Hungarian language, Hungarian names, and all their national costumes. They are Hungarians and they feel themselves to be Hungarians. And of course, when now there is an infringement.
Well, that is, and there's a lot of that, though. I think many nations are upset about Transylvania as well, as you obviously know. But many nations feel frustrated by the redrawn borders of the wars of the 20th century.
Yeah, give it back to fucking Turkey, dog. Yapping around for no fucking particular reason, okay? It all belongs to the Ottoman Empire. I've been saying this. I've been saying it. And yet, for some reason, people don't want to respect it, okay? It's bullshit. It belongs to the Ottoman Empire, and that's why I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the guy who does it, okay? I am Vladimir Yapamir Putin.
And wars going back 1,000 years, the ones that you mentioned. But the fact is that you didn't make this case in public until 2 years ago, February. And in the case that you...
The Ottoman Empire? That's so bad. I've never even thought of that before. The Ottoman Empire, more like it? How dare you? How dare you? I'm fucking mad. Oh my God. The Ottoman Empire, unironically, is real. It's like that fucking... Remember that Tanzimat era thing I used to have on my desktop that I would show you guys sometimes, of like the dudes doing a circle of ass fucking from the Ottoman era, like that poster, the gay butt fucking circle. That is the Ottoman Empire. True. He stole that joke from a Twitter account named Jihad al-Haq. Damn. The Ottoman Empire destroys the Byzantine Empire. I can't show you the actual butt fucking circle, but I used to have that shit directly on my desktop. Like it's the fucking horse porn folder of a particular content creator. Next to my taxes. Oh, okay. Let's continue.
Which I read today. You explain at great length that you felt a physical threat from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat, and that's what got you to move. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Я понимаю, что мои длинные
He said, "Я понимаешь.
они
I'm
I
yapping.
understand that my long speeches
I am
probably
yapping.
fall outside
Oh my God, he is saying he's yapping. Я понимаешь. I'm yapping.
of the genre
That from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat, and that's what got you to move. Is that a fair?
Dude, Tucker Carlson's literally like, dog, stop talking about how you want Ukraine and Ukraine is yours. You wanted to do it because like NATO, right? Like that's the reason why you wanted to do it, because NATO, right? Please, dude, what are you doing? He's like, come on, just say you're doing it because of NATO. That's what you said before the interview. Why are you saying all this stuff about how Ukraine is Russian and how it's been 1,000 years of being Russian and how you must take it back?
Characterization of what you said?
Я понимаю, что
Yeah, я понимаешь. I'm yapping. I know.
мои длинные диалоги, они
I understand that my long speeches probably fall outside of the genre of the interview. That is why I asked you at the beginning,
Yeah, he's saying yapping much.
are we going to have a serious talk or a show? You said a serious talk. So bear with me, please.
Yapping too
We're
much.
coming to the point where the Soviet Ukraine was established. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter. I'm coming to a very important point of today's agenda.
Этот развал Советского Союза.
Thank you.
It is very telling that the first 23 minutes of him was literally talking for like 1,000 years of history. And like, he hasn't even gotten to NATO yet. And Tucker had to like put him back on the rails and be like, you're doing it because of NATO, right? Like, you're doing it because of NATO. And the only thing he talks about is like, oh, the dissolution of the USSR. It's just like, and that's when Ukraine
After all,
formed.
the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian
Я не
leadership.
знаю, чем тогда руководствовалось руководство.
Yeah, I wonder who in the Russian leadership effectively engaged in the collapse of the Soviet Union. Obviously, he would have nothing to do with that, right? I mean, Vladimir Putin himself, he would. That'd be real weird if he was. What a fake friend.
Но
I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine.
первое. Ну, во-первых, я думаю, что руководство России исходило из того, что
First,
фундаментальные
I think that then Russian leadership believed that the fundamentals of the relationship between Russia and Ukraine were, in fact, a common language. More than 90% of the population there spoke Russian.
у каждого третьего какие-то родственные связи.
Family ties. Every third person there had some kind of family or friendship ties. Common culture, common history. Finally, common faith, coexistence.
Hasan sounding like another tongue-bathing establishment mouthpiece, to be honest. Yes, famously, I love being a tongue-bathing establishment mouthpiece, which is precisely why I'm simultaneously called a Hamas terrorist, a dick writer for Iran, a dick writer for China, and even a dick writer for Vladimir Putin. Having a nuanced perspective on global conflicts means that I am, you know, that's it. I'm dick riding everybody, and simultaneously none at all. I'm actually dick riding Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper.
Existence with a single state for centuries and deeply interconnected economies.
Экономика очень сильно взаимосвязана.
All of these were so fundamental. All these elements together make our good relationships inevitable.
Я хочу, чтобы вы, как американские гражданины, чтобы
The second point is a very important one.
прежнее российское
I
руководство
want you, as an American citizen, and your viewers to hear about this as well.
больше никаких разделителей.
The former Russian leadership assumed that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist, and therefore there were no longer any ideological dividing lines.
Инициативно пошла даже на развал Советского Союза.
Russia even agreed voluntarily and proactively to the collapse of the Soviet
Так
Union,
называемым
and believed that this would be understood by the so-called civilized West as an invitation for cooperation and
вот чего
association.
ожидала Россия.
That is what Russia was expecting, both from the United States and the so-called collective West as a whole.
В том числе и в Германии. Эгон Барр.
There were smart people, including in Germany, Egon Bahr, a major politician of the Social Democratic Party, who insisted in his personal conversations with the Soviet leadership on the brink of the collapse of the Soviet Union that a new security system should be established in Europe.
Помочь объединиться Германии, но
Help should be given to unify Germany, but a new system should be also established to include the United States, Canada, Russia, and other Central European countries.
Is he talking about NATO now? Is that what it is? He like went back to post World War II, I think. He talked about the dissolution of the USSR, and then like I can't tell. I can't keep track. Is he now going back to NATO? Because if he had started talking about NATO, if he started talking about NATO from the jump, yeah, he started talking about NATO. If he had started talking about NATO from the jump, he would have a better argument, in my opinion.
Yes.
One, because like Americans don't, the right is like, I guess, ostensibly isolationist, even though they would love NATO in principle. I think they just hate it because like Trump said he doesn't like it. Because I really don't understand why the right doesn't like NATO in general, because like it's everything that they love, just like destroying Libya. You know what I mean? I don't really know why. NATO is European, which is gay. Yeah, I don't think they understand what NATO is. That's why they kind of hate it, or they hate on it. Because of taxes. Yeah, it's so dumb. They don't really get it. Anyway.
But NATO needs not to expand. That's what he said. If NATO expands, everything would be just the same as during the Cold War, only closer to Russia's borders. That's all. He was a wise old man, but no one listened to him. In fact, he got angry once. If he's...
I guess this is why he had to describe like how Ukraine is Russia technically. Because if your only security concerns are NATO, then you can deal with that without invading Ukraine. But if your security concerns come from NATO, and on top of that, Ukraine is technically a Russian, then he can justify why he's just taking back his land and protecting his own people that are being oppressed by, the scary Ukrainian administration that's like Western dogs or something.
Said, you don't listen to me. I'm never setting my foot in Moscow once again. Everything happened just as he had said.
Well, of course, it did come true, and you've mentioned this many times. I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, that the opposite happened. But you've never explained why you think that happened, except to say that the West fears a strong Russia, but we have a strong China the West does not seem very afraid of.
What? Wait. The fuck do you mean? Tucker, what the hell are you saying, dude? The West does not fear a strong China? Brody, where is it? There's like one article about like how U.S. Army Special Forces on long-term bases being placed... Green Berets being stationed in the Republic of China's 101st Amphibious Reconnaissance Battalion on a long-term basis on Kinmen and Matsu. There's literally fucking new defense positions opening up surrounding China. The notion that like America isn't trying to fucking put the same stranglehold on China that it did on the USSR and then subsequently Russia is crazy. I mean, he's not completely wrong militarily. There's more fear against Russia than China, since China is relatively inactive militarily. I guess there's that.
What about Russia, do you think, convinced policymakers they had to take it down?
Запад боится сильного Китая больше, чем сильной России.
The West is afraid of strong China more than it fears a strong Russia. Because Russia has 150 million people and China has 1.5 billion population, and its economy is growing by leaps and bounds, or 5% a year. It used to be even more. But that's enough for China. As Bismarck once put it, potentials are the most important. China's potential is enormous. It is the biggest economy in the world today in terms of purchasing power parity and the size of the economy. It has already overtaken the United States quite a long time ago, and it is growing at a rapid clip. Let's not talk about who is afraid of whom. Let's not reason in such terms. And let's get into the fact that after 1991, when Russia expected that it would be welcomed into the brotherly family of civilized nations, nothing like this happened. You tricked us. I don't mean you personally when I say you. Of course, I'm talking about the United States. The promise was that NATO would not expand eastward, but it happened 5 times. There were 5 waves of expansion. We tolerated all that. We were trying to persuade them. We were saying, please don't. We are as bourgeois now as you are. We are market economy and there is no communist party.
I mean, this part is true. He's not wrong. He ain't wrong about that. I mean, worst guy to say that, but he's right. He's like, we're capitalists. We love capitalism. I love yapping just like you do. I hear Suka blyat, I hear HasanAbi serving top of the hour ad break. He says he's socialist, yet he served ad break at top of the hour. What's that about? Your socialists are also just as bourgeois as we are. We love capitalism. If you no longer want to see those ads, use Amazon Prime. Connect to your Twitch Prime. Or by getting gifted a sub, if you are lucky. Dude, by the way, that accent is going to be coming back in a little bit when I'm defending the borders of Azerbaijan, a not fictional nation, in a game I call Comrade Border Patrol, CBP. It is the 3-minute ad break now.
Let's negotiate. Moreover, I have also said this publicly before. There was a moment when a certain rift started growing between us. Before that, Yeltsin came to the United States. Remember, he spoke in Congress and said the good words. God bless America. Everything he said were signals. Let us in. Remember the developments in Yugoslavia before the Yeltsin was lavished with praise? As soon as the developments in Yugoslavia started, he raised his voice in support of Serbs, and we couldn't but raise our voices for Serbs in their defense. I understand that there were complex processes underway there. I do. But Russia could not help raising its voice in support of Serbs, because
Just Gump, thank you for the 20 gifted subs.
Serbs are also a special and close to us nation, with Orthodox culture and so on. It's a nation that has suffered so much for generations. Well, regardless, what is important is that Yeltsin expressed his support. What did the United States do? In violation of international law and the UN Charter, it started bombing Belgrade. It was the United States that let the genie out of the bottle. Moreover, when Russia protested and expressed its resentment, what was said? The UN Charter and international law have become obsolete. Now everyone invokes international law, but at that time they started saying that everything was outdated. Everything had to be changed. Indeed, some things need to be changed, as the balance of power has changed. It's true, but not in this manner. Yeltsin was immediately dragged through the mud, accused of alcoholism, of understanding nothing, of knowing nothing. He understood everything, I assure you. Well, I became president in 2000. I thought, okay, the Yugoslav issue is over, but we should try to restore relations. Let's reopen the door that Russia had tried to go through. And moreover, I said it publicly, I can reiterate. At a meeting here in the Kremlin with the outgoing President Bill Clinton, right here in the next room, I said to him, I asked him, Bill, do you think if Russia asked to join NATO, do you think it would happen? Suddenly he said, you know, it's interesting. I think so. But indeed...
Interesting. Yeah. Weird. Weird to be this like supposedly pro-socialist guy, Red Scare shit, while he's like very openly talking about his relationship with Bill Clinton.
Evening when we met for dinner, he said, you know, I've talked to my team. No, it's not possible now. You can ask him. I think he will watch our interview. He'll confirm it. I wouldn't have said anything like that if it hadn't happened. Okay.
Were you sincere?
It's impossible now.
Would you have joined NATO?
Look, I asked the question, is it possible or not? And the answer I got was no. If I was insincere in my desire to find out what the leadership position was...
But if he had said yes, would you have joined NATO?
If he had said yes, the process of rapprochement would have commenced, and eventually it might have happened, if we had seen some sincere wish on the other side of our partners. But it didn't happen. Well, no means no. Okay, fine.
Why do you think that is? Just to get to motive, I know you're clearly bitter about it, I understand, but why do you think the West rebuffed you then? Why the hostility? Why did the end of the Cold War not fix the relationship? What motivates this from your point of view?
You said I was bitter about the answer. No, it's not bitterness. It's just a statement of fact. We're not bride and groom, bitterness, resentment. It's not about those kind of matters in such circumstances. We just realized we weren't welcome there, that's all. Okay, fine. But let's build relations in another manner. Let's look for common ground elsewhere. Why we received such a negative response, you should ask your leaders. I can only guess why. Too big a country with its own opinion and so on. And the United States, I've seen how issues are being resolved in NATO. I will give you another example now concerning Ukraine. The US leadership exerts pressure, and all NATO members obediently vote, even if they do not like something. Now, I'll tell you what happened in this regard with Ukraine in 2008, although it's being discussed. I'm not going to open a secret to you, say anything new. Nevertheless, after that we tried to build relations in different ways. For example, the events in the Middle East, in Iraq. We were building relations with the United States in a very soft, prudent, cautious manner. I repeatedly raised the issue that the United States should not support separatism or terrorism in the North Caucasus. But they continued to do it anyway. And political support, information support, financial support, even military support came from the United States and its satellites for terrorist groups in the Caucasus. I once raised this issue with my colleague, also the President of the United States. He says, "It's impossible. Do you have proof?" I said, "Yes." I was prepared for this conversation, and I gave him that proof. He looked at it, and you know what he said? "I apologize, but that's what happened." I'll quote. He says, "Well, I'm gonna kick their ass." We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to the FSB director, "Write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President?" He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, "We have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it." Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government?
Of course, they meant in that particular case the separatists, the terrorists who fought with us.
Dude. There you go. You want this? You think this is readable? Okay,
In the
let's do
Caucasus. That's who they call the opposition. This is the second point. The third moment is a very important one. Is the moment when the US missile defense system was created. The beginning. We persuaded for a long time not to do it in the United States. Moreover, after was invited by Bush Jr.'s father, Bush Sr., to visit his place on the ocean, I had a very serious conversation with President Bush and his team. I proposed that the United States, Russia, and Europe jointly create a missile defense system that, we believe, if created unilaterally, threatens our security, despite the fact that the United States officially said that it was being created against missile threats from Iran. That was the justification for the deployment of the missile defense system. I suggested working together, Russia, the United States, and Europe. They said it was very interesting. They asked me, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely."
Let me ask, what year was this?
I don't remember. It is easy to find out on the internet when I was in the USA at the invitation of Bush Sr. It is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about. I was told it was very interesting. I said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge together. The world will change. We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, "Are you serious?" I said, "Of course. We need to think about it," I'm told. I said, "Go ahead, please." Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former director.
I feel like he wants to be Israel so bad. Like, think about it. Like, if I'm to take everything he's saying at face value, okay, he kind of wants to be Israel. He's like, I want to be America's ally so I can do whatever the fuck I want. And I also want to take Ukraine. I want to expand into Ukraine. Ukraine is mine. I have laid historic claim to Ukraine. Okay. I'm literally your guy. Let me also participate in like this allegiance so I can just be, I can be your roll dog. Do you think you want to be like Turkey? No. Ain't nobody want to be like Turkey.
Of CIA and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, Right here at this table, they sat on this table. Me, the foreign minister, the Russian defense minister on that side. They said to me, yes, we have thought about it. We agree. I said, thank God, great, but with some exceptions.
So twice you've described US presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads.
Why you hate your own kind? Wait, what? My own kind? Brother, talking about Turks like they're fucking a different species. Holy shit, dude. Least racist American guy.
So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
Именно так.
That's right, that's right. In the end, they just told us to get lost. I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation. But our proposal was declined, that's a fact. It was right then when I said, look, but then we will be forced to take countermeasures.
He's literally like, dog, why don't you want us to be like your, Russian Israel? We also blow up Muslim populations like all the time. Okay, we love blowing up Muslim populations. Like, come on, dog. Let me be your fucking Israel, homie. What the fuck?
We will create such strike systems that will certainly overcome missile defense systems. The answer was, we are not doing this against you, and you do what you want, assuming that it is not against us, not against the United States.
Why does his simping America make America look kind of weirdly Russophobic? I don't know what you mean by that.
I said, okay, very well. That's the way it went. And we created hypersonic systems with intercontinental range, and we continue to develop them. We are now ahead of everyone. The United
By the way, the interview is now, for me at least, becoming clear. The purpose of this interview is to be as sympathetic to like American Republicans as possible. That's why I said the Israel thing. Like, Republicans love Israel. And he's making Israel-ass arguments without the obvious, like, religious association that is also profoundly important for the evangelical Christianity side of things. And I feel like he's just trying to be like, look, I'm a small bean. I'm a small bean conservative nationalist. Like, you're a small bean conservative nationalist. Why don't we just like get it together? Because I was trying to figure out like what, obviously he wants to do propaganda, but his line of attack, like what his line of attack, like what his goals are here was interesting to me. And it seems like he's just trying to come across as like rational, reasonable. Don't really even talk about like the atrocities in Ukraine. Don't even fucking talk about what the Ukrainians have done, right? Because, like, if he was making an argument internally, domestically, if he was making a similar argument to Tucker Carlson about the same argument that he makes domestically, he'd be talking about Ukraine and like how Ukrainians are so violent and so bad, and LPR and DPR has a bunch of Russians that they wouldn't allow to separate. But instead, he's like, I love America. I love linking up and building. And America doesn't want me to link up and build.
United States and the other countries in terms of the development of hypersonic strike systems, and we are improving them every day. But it wasn't us. We proposed to go the other way, and we were pushed back. Now, about NATO's expansion to the east. Well, we were promised no NATO to the east, not an inch to the east, as we were told. And then what? They said, well, it's not enshrined on paper, so we'll expand. So there were 5 waves of expansion, the Baltic states, the whole of Eastern Europe, and so on.
This is why people say I'm a Putin dick rider, by the way, because there are parts of what he's talking about that make total fucking sense, and nothing about like Ukraine being Russian or whatever. But as far as like NATO expansion goes, and that being seen as a genuine threat for Russia, yeah, of course, that makes total sense.
And now I come to the...
Especially post-USSR dissolution, when fucking Russia literally is, in his own words, a capitalist lapdog, like run by oligarchs that sold the fucking country piecemeal to Western banks. So he's like, why the fuck can't we be friends? Is what he's saying. Why are you still propping up NATO? Let me join NATO. Now, I don't know if he's like being serious about joining NATO or not, but he's basically saying like, you're using NATO against me, but I'm your guy, which he was.
The main thing, they have come to the Ukraine ultimately. In 2008, at the summit in Bucharest, they declared that the doors for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO were open. Now about how decisions are made there. Germany, France seem to be against it, as well as some other European countries. But then, as it turned out later, President Bush, and he's such a tough guy, a tough politician, as I was told later, he exerted pressure on us and we had to agree. It's ridiculous, it's like kindergarten. Where are the guarantees? What kindergarten is this? What kind of people are these? Who are they? You see, they were pressed, they agreed. And then they say, Ukraine won't be in the NATO, you know? I say, I don't know. I know you agreed in 2008. Why won't you agree in the future? Well, they pressed us then. I say, why won't they press you tomorrow? And you'll agree again. Well, it's not.
One thing that I do find very funny is that, like, he's like, oh, well, why don't you put it in writing? This is a thing that, like, Americans also say about Russia, where they're like, well, Russia always reneges on, like, prior deals. Why could we trust them? And it's like, bro, you're America. Like, look at what Trump did with the Iran denuclearization agreement. And that's one of many different instances. We literally have a policy in China called strategic ambiguity, which is just a fancy word for lying. It's a fancy substitute for just lying and saying, no, you don't understand. It's one China. But also, we do believe that, you know, we're going to keep arming and utilizing Taiwan as like a military base, a forward operating base directly into China. So American history, American foreign policy is filled with America writing up treaties or having handshake agreements that they do not follow through on. And the same, of course, goes for Russia as well. But it is ridiculous that we have this like one-sided approach in this situation where we're like, oh, it's only the Russians that violate agreements, when NATO expansion is correct. Like, it did happen time and time again. And it happened after the dissolution of the USSR as well. My opinion on it is that it happened because it is a moneymaker. It's a moneymaker. And Russia's existence, Russia's actions, Russia's existence is a way to perfectly continue justifying NATO and continue expanding NATO. That's it.
Nonsensical. Who's there to talk to? I just don't understand. We're ready to talk. But with whom? Where are the guarantees? None. So they started to develop the territory of Ukraine. Whatever is there, I have told you the background, how this territory developed, what kind of relations there were with Russia. Every second or third person there has always had some ties with Russia. And during the elections in already independent, sovereign Ukraine, which gained its independence as a result of the Declaration of Independence. And by the way, it says that Ukraine is a neutral state, and in 2008, suddenly the doors or gates to NATO were open to it. Oh, come on. This is not how we agreed. Now, all the presidents that have come to power in Ukraine, they relied on electorate with a good attitude to Russia in one way or the other. This is the southeast of Ukraine. This is a large number of people. And it was very difficult to dissuade this electorate, which had a positive attitude towards Russia. Viktor Yanukovych came to power, and how? The first time he won after President Kuchma, they organized a third round, which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine someone in the United States.
All those sovereign countries shouldn't have the right to join NATO. Hasan, Realpolitik, Piker. Oh, God, dude. Come on, brother. Jesus Christ. It is literally a fucking protection racket. Stop fucking playing with me. Oh, my God. I already ran the top of the hour break if you're trying to fucking do this. Yeah, it's always a voluntary association. Yes, countries want weapons. Okay, they like having guns. America sells them. Okay, America gives them to you when you join NATO. Great. It's still bad. It's also additionally funny because it's contentious with the supposed socialists that claim to be socialist, and then they dick ride NATO. It makes no fucking sense. It is an institution designed to eviscerate socialism and communism. It was directly created. It was directly created to reinforce American hegemony and set up a protection racket, sometimes for valid reasons, but other times specifically to create a self-reinforcing cycle of steady flow of weapons and asses changing hands in that process from Europe back to America and vice versa. Literally hired actual Nazis and actual fascists in every fucking country that it existed in and it operated in, destabilized quietly all of the European nations that it operated in, from Italy to Germany. Well, Germany was a little bit more willing, West Germany specifically, and everywhere else. Okay. And it's like hidden under the guise of, see, this is the problem. Would you consider NATO expansion as colonial conquest? It's not actual straight up colonialism because it's a voluntary military alliance that countries are joining. Okay? You say that, and it's the same as saying, like, well, technically, why is the World Bank and IMF actual imperialism, a continuation of imperialism? How could you say that? Those are just financial contracts. Like, what? I don't really understand it. It's still the same exact fucking way. They operate in the exact same way. If you want to think about it, if you want to understand it, just imagine if it wasn't America doing it, but like China doing it, and then you can maybe recognize that it's not being done with the most honest intentions. Oh, yeah. Just imagine it's like a Chinese deal.
States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014?
Нет.
Before that.
Нет, нет.
No, this was before that, after President Kuchma, Viktor Yanukovych won the elections. However, his opponents did not recognize that victory. The US supported the opposition, and the third round was scheduled. What is this? This is a coup. The US supported it, and the winner of the third round came to power. Imagine if in the US something was not to someone's liking, and the third round of election, which the US Constitution does not provide for, was organized. Nonetheless, it was done in Ukraine. Okay, Viktor Yushchenko, who was considered the
I don't support NATO. It's just realpolitik. Countries join NATO because it protects them against Putin. Yeah. No, the realpolitik is not that countries join NATO because it protects them against Putin. Well, now they do, and now they can. The realpolitik of it is the same reason why countries have signed on to the Abraham Accords. They want American weapons. That's it. And they also don't want to be an enemy of the United States of America. Because if you're an enemy of the United States of America, you don't get away with shit that Turkey does. That's kind of what he was basically describing when he's saying, like, I want to deal with you guys. I want to deal positively. We're bourgeois as well. Look at us. We're a bourgeois democracy. We liberalized our markets. That's what it is. Look at Turkey. You know what I mean?
The pro-Western politician came to power. Fine, we have built relations with him as well. He came to Moscow with visits. We visited Kiev. I visited too. We met in an informal setting. If he's pro-Western, so be it. It's fine. Let people do their job. The situation should have developed inside independent Ukraine itself. As a result of Kuchma's leadership, things got worse and Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all. Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician. I don't know. I don't want to give assessments.
You are not beating the Russia allegations?
However, the issue of the association with the EU came up. We have always been lenient to this. Suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders for Europe, which could have led to flooding of our market. We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall close our borders with Ukraine then. The customs borders, that is. Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain, how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing. The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps, which were supported by the West. It all came down to Maidan and a coup in Ukraine.
So he did more trade with Russia than with the EU. Ukraine did.
Of course. It's not even the matter of trade volume, although for the most part it is.
Look at Turkey. What? Turkey has its whole eastern border being destabilized by NATO. Nobody's taking anything easy on Turkey for being in NATO. What do you mean? Turkey gets to fucking literally overtake the northern Syrian corridor without a single fucking peep from Western media. Why is that the case? Because Incirlik is a fucking nuclear armed, is an American base with nuclear arms on it. The fuck do you mean? Also, partially the reason why Erdogan gets to talk a big game about how like, oh, Israel this, Israel that, Satan Yahoo, 1 minute, I will fuck you in the ass, all this shit. While simultaneously, there's literal fucking Turkey's doing that to Syria despite NATO. Yeah, you're fucking ridiculous if you think that Turkey's position as a NATO nation doesn't play a role in America not coming down hard on Turkey. Isn't it odd that only NATO-aligned nations are able to engage in such actions? The fuck do you mean? As long as you are an ally to the United States of America, you get away with whatever the fuck you want. You have childlike politics. If you personally do not recognize that, your politics are silly if you don't recognize it. Also, what NATO did in Turkey, ironically identical to what it did in, also aligning, propping up ultra-nationalist fascists like the fucking Grey Wolves against the socialists, the trade unionists, and the communists in Turkey. Okay? So that's another mark for my anti-NATO perspective. Okay? Like these ultra-nationalist fascists that have also been prominent and propped up the Erdogan regime with their coalition there's a direct through line there between NATO involvement in Turkey, obviously nuclear bases being set up, missiles pointing directly on the USSR soil, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all the way to Recep Tayyip Erdogan being able to do whatever the fuck he wants in the region because he's a part of NATO. It's not an accident after the 700th time that America aligns with fascists in their endless endeavor to eradicate socialism.
It is the matter of cooperation ties, which the entire Ukrainian economy was based on. The cooperation ties between the enterprises were very close since the times of the Soviet Union. One enterprise there used to produce components to be assembled both in Russia and Ukraine and vice versa. They used to be very close ties. A coup d'etat was committed, although I shall not delve into details now, as I find doing it inappropriate, the US told us. Calm Yanukovych down, and we will calm the opposition. Let the situation unfold in the scenario of a political settlement. We said, all right, agreed, let's do it this way. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed a coup in Kiev. What is that supposed to mean? Who do you think you are? I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you.
Oh! Yo! He's right. Tucker Carlson's dad is CIA, by the way. Voice of America. God damn. Fucking got his ass. Tucker Carlson's dad is literally CIA. Tucker Carlson wanted to join the CIA That's crazy that Vladimir Putin just fucking dropped that in the.
ЦРУ, конечно.
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand.
Хотя это серьезно.
We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand. My
That's so funny. Yanukovych's Berkut forces literally shot and killed over 100 people in my
former vis-a-vis in the sense that I served in the First Name Directorate, Soviet Union's intelligence service.
Оппоненты все.
They have always been our opponents. A job is a job.
Но технически они все сделали правильно.
Technically, they did everything right. They achieved their goal of changing the government. However, from political standpoint, it was a colossal mistake. Surely it was political leadership's miscalculation. They should have seen what it would evolve into.
Итак, в 2014
So,
году
in 2008, the doors of NATO were open for Ukraine. In 2014, there was a coup. They started persecuting those who did not accept the coup, and it was indeed a coup. They created the threat to Crimea, which we had to take under our protection.
Dude, Russia saying they have to come in and involve themselves in Ukraine because like they're being undemocratic to the Russian, like to the ethnic Russians in the Eastern territories is so funny because it's literally America shit. Okay? It is identical to America shit. It's like America being like, yeah, we're going to Afghanistan because they're not treating gay people right. It's what Israel does about their defense of their ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Straight up. And no, for those of you who are dense as fuck, I know there's a lot of people who are horny to like cut anything and everything I say here that even comes across as like even remotely pro-Putin as like a yet another instance where I'm dick riding Putin or some shit. I'm not saying that that's good, okay? I'm saying that that's bad. I'm using America shit in a way in a way that is bad, okay? Objectively bad. It's kind of funny saying it's America shit when Russia has been doing this before white people walked in NA. Yes, but I say it's America shit because obviously in the way that we understand contemporary politics, it's America that does that. Okay? It is a continuation of obviously the oldest colonial trick in the book, which is we are civilizing the barbarians, right? The indigenous forces that we must wipe out and enslave deserve or are worthy of the civilizing force of colonial, the supreme colonial cultures. That's the same thing. When I say America shit, I'm just talking about the same exact continuation of that policy, of that principle. Like Tibet? Yes. Yes, dude. Yes, you're right. Tibetan, like actual Tibetan slaves joining the revolutionary forces is identical to the colonial violence and the enslavement of an indigenous population. Thank you. No, there are differences between a feudal population and the subjects of said feudal population joining the revolutionary forces to abolish the feudal slave-like conditions that they existed under versus a barbaric indigenous population, which, by the way, yes, they had practices that were violent, of course, in tribes and whatnot, getting brutalized in infinitely worse ways by an outside alien superpower. Apparently, Moscow was on fire right now during the release of this interview. Wait, what? Multiple fires being reported in Moscow? Hashtag Tucker Putin? I don't believe that. No, this seems like fucking fake news to me. It's 31. It's got 31 likes. That seems fucking bullshit.
They launched the war in Donbass in 2014 with the use.
Brother, check your mouth. Not all indigenous nations were openly violent. No, man. That's why I said, yes, certainly there were violent practices in indigenous populations, but that does not mean that it was justifiable to enslave all of them. You are so silly. I did not say what you think I said. Just really take a breather before you get
using
mad.
aircraft and artillery against civilians.
Huh.
This is when it all started. There's a video of aircraft attacking Donetsk from above. They launched a large-scale military operation, then another one. When they failed, they started to prepare the next one. All this against the background of military development of this territory and opening of NATO's doors. How could we not express concern over what was happening? From our side, this would have been a culpable negligence. That's what it would have been.
Why so many folks on our dig today? Because I'm watching a massive interview with Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson. And there's going to be a lot of like Ukraine watchers who are very hawkish towards me that used to be former fans who then got like, who I was probably very mean to, if I'm being real, leading up to Russia invading Ukraine in a very snarky way, to which I've apologized since then for getting it wrong and even being snarky about getting it wrong, but they haven't given up. It's been 2 years and they still have not let go. They will not let go forever, I'm pretty sure. So they mostly just come in here to look for any and every opportunity that they can claim that I'm actually very much pro-Putin to keep that love affair alive in their own circles. Whereas if they genuinely listened to what I had to say, they would understand that I'm anti-NATO for sure. I've never, I've never missed words on that, but certainly even more anti-Putin. The Moscow fires are real? Oh shit, that's crazy. Of course, that big, like, there was a big split during the Sam Harris Cenk Uyghur 3-hour debate many years prior amongst the progressive left, where there were people who were like, no, I'm actually Islamophobic and it's perfectly valid to be Islamophobic. Okay. Versus the Cenk Uyghur coalition of the left at the time, the online left, the online progressive movement that was like, no, I think we should be like more understanding of Muslim populations and not engage in like such severe acts of violence and destabilization upon them. I think that in my community, a similar split happened in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where a lot of people that were like, oh no, you're fucking totally wrong and you were an asshole to me. A lot of those people basically became like complete aligned with the United States of America, no matter what they do, with some deviations every now and then, like, but reluctantly pro-American imperialism. Not you, just leftist media in general. I'm so tired of being called a tanky. Yeah. To my shame, I was in the Harris camp back then. I know better now. Yeah. Ironic, because a lot of people who used to be in the Harris camp then turned around from the Sam Harris Islamophobia camp that were anti-Trump for a very long time, looked at what was going on in Ukraine and like kind of took on another more reactionary position that like America reluctantly has to keep being violent and engage in acts of imperialism. That kind of thing. And now that, now they call me a terrorist for interviewing a Yemeni kid who they fucking obviously call a terrorist, an anti-Semite, a slaver, and numerous other things. Still to this day. In spite of the fact that he is none of those things at all. They were very mad that I humanized a person from Yemen when America was blowing up positions inside of Yemen. Oh, and a son of an oligarch as well, which is really funny. But yeah, to answer your question in the most long-winded, convoluted way possible, I think those are the reasons. But once again, I have to ask for charitability as always. Be charitable. Don't be motivated by what you have watched as far as like videos that other content creators have made of me. As long as you are willing to learn my position, I will always tell you I'm honest to a fault in that regard. I don't hide it. I will tell you always, which is why so many people simultaneously hold the position that like I'm doing this to be popular, while also they recognize that it is a deeply unpopular position to hold. Yeah, all the drama lefty said you're pro-terrorist. I know.
It's just that the US political leadership pushed us to the line we could not cross, because doing so could have ruined Russia itself. Besides, we could not leave our brothers in faith, in fact, a part of Russian people, in the face of this war machine.
What was but that was 8 years before the current conflict started. So what was the trigger for you? What was the moment where you decided you had to do this?
Спровоцировал конфликт.
We'll get to Biden talking in the White House in like 15 minutes, okay? Once again, though, to all my haters that are in here, I love you, okay? I do. And I hope that one day you will understand my position. Why are you triggered? Wait, what? I'm not triggered. Why am I triggered?
Initially, it was the coup in Ukraine that provoked the conflict. By the way, back then the representatives of 3 European countries, Germany, Poland, and France, arrived.
Biden's trying to steal Pootie Poo's thunder.
They were the guarantors of the signed agreement between the government of Yanukovych and the opposition. They signed it as guarantors. Despite that, the opposition committed a coup, and all these countries pretended that they didn't remember that they were guarantors of the peaceful settlement. They just threw it in the stove right away, and nobody recalls that.
Ukraine is also a neo-imperialist counter-revolutionary project propped up specifically to prevent socialism from spreading in Eastern Europe. Russia is literally acting in self-defense. Putin represents the last bastion for the dictatorship of the proletariat. Is so funny. Because one, he literally started this interview and even his like invasion of Ukraine by shitting on Lenin. Okay. And even in this interview, like 20 minutes in, he was like, we're bourgeois. We're a bourgeois democracy. We liberalized our markets. Why are you guys not letting us kill Muslims? Just like you, we want to kill Muslims alongside you. Please give us money to kill Muslims instead of trying to kill us with this NATO shit. Okay. So the idea that like, dude, it's so sick. Yeah. Vladimir Putin, the eminent upholder of proletarian dictatorship. The only thing he's upholding is the dictatorship part of that, but certainly not at the behest of the proletarian, and more so for what he is, which is an oligarch, and definitely firmly within you know, in the context of being a capitalist. It's a joke? Oh, okay.
I don't know if the US know anything about the agreement between the opposition and the authorities and its 3 guarantors who, instead of bringing this whole situation back in the political field, supported the coup. Although it was meaningless, believe me. Because President Yanukovych agreed to all conditions, he was ready to hold an early election which he had no chance of winning, frankly speaking. Everyone knew that. Then why the coup? Why the victims? Why threatening Crimea? Why launching an operation in Donbass? This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup. I think one of the deputy secretaries of state said that it cost a large sum of money, almost 5 billion. But the political mistake was colossal. Why would they have to do that? All this could have been done legally, without victims, without military action, without losing Crimea.
That's pretty funny. He's like, dude, come on, dog. I can't believe the CIA did military actions in Ukraine. Yeah, all of this could have been done without any deaths is like a really funny thing to say when, you know, you've been pummeling Ukraine, just destroying Eastern Ukraine. Still, all this shit is USA's fault? No, USA involvement only goes USA involvement only goes as far as like the moment that Russia invaded Ukraine. It is entirely, and I've said this time and time again, it is entirely Russia's fault after that moment. America can continue its interest in pilfering Ukraine, okay, in its weakest moment, keep whispering sweet nothings to the Ukrainians that they are going to permanently support them when they don't have that same interest, especially when, you know, another ally is all of a sudden more important because they're doing some genocide, a quick genocide on the side. Okay. But overall, there are a lot of viewers in here who 100% think Putin is right to attack because NATO, US triggered it. Yeah, I don't think that. And I have said this since day one, and I make fun of those people all the time. But you might not know that because maybe you're not in here all the time. I routinely joke about people who push Z or the MAGA communists. I know there's a Biden speech, chat. I know. We're waiting on it. It's not live yet. So what would you have Putin do other than invade NATO after repeatedly cross Russian red lines? Not saying he's right. He already annexed Crimea. What are you talking about? It's Jover. He annexed Crimea. There is no world in which he actually has to fucking invade Ukraine. It's ridiculous. He knows that the Western forces are never going to expand and allow Ukraine into NATO. He knows that. He already took parts of Ukraine, especially parts that are mostly occupied with Russian people in general, because of a prior Russification and relocation of the indigenous Tatar population. Okay. There's literally a Russian base there already. How'd you stop him? So you'd have him annex LPR and DPR without invading? How? No. No, you don't annex LPR and DPR at all. At all. Like, people say that Vladimir Putin invaded eastern Ukraine because of 20,000 mostly ethnic Russians died in LPR and DPR. No, that's just a fucking Putin justification for it. That's ridiculous. How many fucking ethnic Russians have died since then? What are you talking about? Yeah, dude, that was a really good tactical moment for Vladimir Putin. He really saved a lot of ethnic Russian lives in eastern Ukraine when he invaded Ukraine. Come on, dude. I think personally that he greatly miscalculated, maybe due to how easy it was to dominate Ukraine in 2014, when its military prowess was and its military equipment was significantly, I mean, it was nothing in comparison to what it is now. And they were wrong. They were not able to maintain air superiority. They bombed the shit out of even Western positions, and they failed. They failed. He thought that he could do it. He thought he could annex it, which I literally think was impossible regardless. Okay. It was a massive misstep. It was a massive failure. There's a reason why European countries are still very much purchasing Russian gas, for example, through secondary markets. You could have just kept your fucking head down and kept dealing with your European trade partners and just didn't have to engage in like weird hyper nationalistic shit for the purpose of, I guess, like, I don't know, galvanizing patriotic support, not getting outflanked by even more nationalist forces within your country, or maybe because you personally genuinely believe in the fucking hyper nationalist mentality that like Ukraine belongs to Russia. That much seemingly is true. I mean, he's basically saying it. It shows that a war against more evenly matched countries, firepower, not manpower, ends up in a standstill. we're too used for big countries attacking smaller and weaker ones? No, because no, you don't understand. If Ukraine was not armed in any way by the UN, or not UN, sorry, by NATO, by America, by Western forces, Vladimir Putin would still not be able to permanently annex the country. This has been my position since day one. That is oftentimes people point to that one tweet about me saying like Vladimir Putin is bad, not mad. He would never invade Ukraine. That would be a fucking major foolish decision. Remember, I never deleted that tweet on purpose. Because I never deleted that tweet because the part that people literally forget is why I said that, which is because it would be impossible for Vladimir Putin to engage in a counterinsurgency. It would destroy Russia. Even without arms being funneled into Ukraine by the thousands, by the billions of dollars worth, okay, old equipment or not, you cannot go against a country with 44 million people in it that have nowhere else to fucking go, that are not going to sit there idly and take it. That's the reason why he was like, oh, it's a special operation. Fuck no, it wasn't a special operation at all. You are wrong twice, actually. He did invade and it yet hasn't destroyed Russia. Brother, if you think that this is if you think that the invasion of Ukraine has been a W for either side, you are huffing on maximum amounts of copium. It obviously is a standstill and the counteroffensive failed in the way that the American government and the Western media presented it at first. It never came to be. Ukraine has hemorrhaged combatants. Russia also has hemorrhaged combatants in this process by a significant chunk. It comes down to a major Russian intelligence failure, which believes there would be far less Ukrainian resistance and far more support among ethnic Russians, which wasn't the case. Yes. I think that they maybe thought that it would be like Crimea, which was ridiculous. I always point to Kharkiv as a great example of an area that was more pro-Russian pre-invasion due to Russian sympathy and ethnically Russian people living there. And look at it now. Ain't nobody is fucking pro-Russia after their entire existence is wiped out, after their homes are wiped out, after their fucking apartment complexes are reduced to rubble. You're not going to be pro-Russia at that point. Ethnic Russian is such a misleading term. Many Russian-speaking cities are mostly pro-Ukrainian. Look at Kherson. Yeah, I don't know how else to communicate that point. Like more sympathetic to Russia. There were areas in eastern Ukraine that are more sympathetic to Russia. The further east you go in Ukraine, the more people used to be sympathetic to Russia. This doesn't mean that they wanted to be invaded by Russia or anything like that. Okay? Clearly, they did not want to be invaded by Russia. They are now invaded by Russia, and look at them. They are not pro-Russia at all. Like, I'm not saying that they wanted to be liberated by the glorious Putin, Vladimir Putin. That's not what I'm saying at all. The point I was basically making is that even those areas that I think Vladimir Putin thought he would be able to easily annex similar to Crimea, he was not going to be able to do so. I'm ethnically Russian hardly makes any sense, because if we're getting into the history like Putin, there are a fuck ton of ethnic groups that aren't in the Russian ethnic group but are native to the land. Yeah. I don't know what the proper way to communicate that would be. To be fair, it doesn't matter what they think. I know people in Mariupol who are pro-Ukraine, but Russia pushed Azov shit in, and now the people are pro-Russia. It's just power imposition. Yeah, okay, dude. Come on. I'm not missing the Biden speech. He's not live yet. Shut the fuck up. Anyway. Yeah, you're convincing me now that this whole thing was a justification to flush out ethnic and political groups not aligned with Putin and solidify his position in nationalistic fervor to fervor of those left. Now, I think internally, maybe Putin was a little worried about being outflanked from the right, from other ultra-nationalist forces, but I don't really know. I feel like he's got that shit on lock. But his justifications for invading Ukraine were fraught. It was fraudulent. There is no real justification for invading Ukraine. And I think a lot of people personally that claim that, like, oh, he did it to, like, defend Donbass or whatever are wrong. Like, that's ridiculous. It's like when America says we have to go and invade a place because they're killing women there or something. You know, it's just fucking bullshit. That previous dude is simply wrong. Ukraine destroyed a huge percentage of the Russian army. By the way, for the counteroffensive, you might have heard this somewhere, but NATO U.S. generals told Ukraine to attack in one direction with most of the force being there, but Zelensky was against that, and he decided to do it all across in the front in Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kharkiv. This is one of the generals why Zelensky was fired. Okay. I am at the 50th minute on the interview. We'll keep going until Biden goes on.
We would have never considered to even lift a finger if it hadn't been for the bloody developments on Maidan. Because we agreed with the fact that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, our borders should be along the borders of former Union's republics. We agreed
My
to
bourbon
that.
gamer, thank you for the 5
We never agreed to NATO's expansion, and moreover, we never agreed that Ukraine would be in NATO. We did not agree to NATO bases there without any discussion with us. For decades, we kept asking, don't do this, don't do that. And what triggered the latest events? Firstly, the current Ukrainian leadership declared that it would not implement the Minsk agreements, which had been signed, as you know, after the events of 2014 in Minsk, where the plan of peaceful settlement in Donbass was set forth. But no, the current Ukrainian leadership, foreign minister, all other officials, and then President himself said that they don't like anything about the Minsk agreements. In other words, they were not going to implement it. A year or a year and a half ago, former leaders of Germany and France said openly to the whole world that they indeed signed the Minsk agreements, but they never intended to implement them. They simply led us by the nose.
Was there anyone for you to talk to? Did you call a U.S. President, Secretary of State, and say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to be we're going to act?
By the way, here's why this is like pure, unadulterated pro-Putin propaganda hour from Tucker. Notice how every single time, including like in the first 30 minutes where Putin was like talking about fucking, I don't know, the history of how every Ukrainian is technically Russian in real life or whatever, he kept trying to bring the conversation back to rails in a way that is like more appropriate for Western audience consumption. That's basically what he's doing every single time he feels like Putin is deviating away. Like he straight up said, okay, but let's talk about NATO. You invaded Ukraine because of NATO, right? While he literally was like, everyone in Ukraine is actually Russian. And I think that we will liberate the glorious Russians that live in Ukraine. He's like, no, but NATO, right? Like NATO. Is there no one that you could talk to in America? What's going on? It's kind of awesome. I won't lie. It's kind of awesome that he gets to be so patriotic, quote unquote, while eating Russia's dick so hard, Putin's dick so hard. I wish I could do that. Vladdy Poo talking to Tucker Carlson about, I mean, this is real yaponomics, okay? I've never seen Yappington of this variety, okay? 2 hours and fucking 7 minutes of it. Holy moly. Let's continue.
We talked about this all the time. We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately, to implement the Minsk agreements. Frankly speaking, I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I was ready to implement them. These agreements were complicated for Ukraine. They included lots of elements.
Yes, I will be doing Comrade Border Patrol after this, don't worry.
Of those Donbass territories' independence. That's true. However, I was absolutely confident, and I'm saying this to you now. I honestly believe that if we managed to convince the residents of Donbass, and we had to work hard to convince them to return to the Ukrainian statehood, then gradually the wounds would start to heal. When this part of territory reintegrated itself into common social environment, when the pensions and social benefits were paid again, all the pieces would gradually fall into place. No, nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the issue by military force only. But we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything. They also started preparing for military.
The fuck? Bro, your comments are trash now. Just because you're disillusioned doesn't mean you should propagate it into your audience. Stop claiming leftism if you don't live up to the standard. You're one of, if not the biggest voice on the left. Where's your revolutionary optimism? Are you okay? We're fucking... Have you thought that maybe there is valid criticism of how you as a leftist major online voice use your excess capital to benefit the desperate movement in the US? I think I'm probably, if I'm coming across as disillusioned, I think this is probably a big part of the reason why. Because like a lot of people who fancy themselves to be like rugged leftists are just so fucking stupid. Like, I'm sorry, you're a 39-month subscriber and like Hasan is shifting towards reactionary tendencies would ultimately side with capitalists like he's telling you now. Like for the past month, for the past couple of months, you've just like been nonstop talking about like how I'm grifting and all this shit and like honestly, I'm not disillusioned. I think I'm very realistic about like America's hopes and chances. But I'll be honest, it's LARPers like yourself that do make me just absolutely fucking hate being a leftist. I thought this guy was like trying to get me to do a top of the hour ad break, but no, this guy literally thinks that like watching Twitch streamers are practice or some shit. Jesus Christ, dude. Please. Brother, go outside, okay? 39-month subscriber talking about fucking how I've like lost the revolutionary optimism and I'm a reactionary or something. Let's continue.
Reaction. It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this war. And we did not start this war in 2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
Do you think you've stopped it now? I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year. And it was not our initiative, because we were told by the Europeans, in particular, that it was necessary to create conditions for the final signing of the documents. My counterparts in France and Germany said, how can you imagine them signing a treaty with a gun to their heads? The troops should be pulled back from Kiev. I said, all right. We withdrew the troops from Kiev. As soon as we pulled back our troops from Kiev, our Ukrainian...
It's because Boris Johnson, that Ottoman fail son, okay, that escaped, did not want Turkey to be known as the country that finally brought peace, okay, to Ukraine. That's why he did that shit. I'm going to tell you right now, that son of a bitch. It was going to be glorious when Turkey was able to, it was going to be glorious when Turkey was going to finally secure peace in Ukraine, okay? And then Boris Johnson was like, no, I will not have it. I will not have it.
The negotiators immediately threw all our agreements reached in Istanbul into the bin.
Read a good comment for a change. I'm a libtard that is slowly getting his mind's eye opened by you. Worst part is I'm Palestinian. That's probably why it took this long for you to have your opinions shifted in the leftmost direction. You probably started realizing that a lot of liberals' contents that you consume personally did not have your best interest in mind, and that they were just unconditionally lapping up American State Department propaganda. And you saw that when it came to Israel, and you were like, wait a minute, this doesn't actually correspond to their own fucking values at all. What the fuck? I thought these guys were progressive. But anyway, I hope your family is all right.
And got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe. That is how the situation has developed. And that is how it looks now.
But what is, pardon my ignorance, what is denazification? What would that mean? What is,
Tucker's like, wait a minute, you don't like Nazis? Hold on. What am I doing here? Tucker Carlson's like, wait, hold on. I feel very unsafe. I thought you were pro-Nazi. Yeah, dude, he's so Vladimir Putin is so anti-Nazi. He even dealt with the Wagner group. Just kidding. Obviously, the denazification thing is bullshit. Please, I know I can't make any jokes on this stuff because people are very quick to pounce on it. I've maintained the position that Vladimir Putin's like denazification sentiment has always been a lie from the jump.
Да, вот я как раз хочу сейчас об этом сказать. Это очень важный вопрос. Денацификация.
That is what I want to talk about right now. It is a very important.
It's not bullshit. Ukrainian army has a lot of Nazis. No, dude, it's fucking bullshit because like so does the Russian army. Okay, that is not a good reason, nor even remotely a reason at all to invade Ukraine. Again, another thing that I said literally the day of the invasion was all you do when you invade a country that has a lot of nationalistic sentiment, okay, is galvanize the Nazis and the nationalists as the emancipatory force. Okay? That's it. If you want to denazify Ukraine, you probably should have never, you definitely should have never invaded Ukraine. There is no denazification occurring in that sort. Anyway.
Issue. Denazification. After gaining independence, Ukraine began to search, as some Western analysts say,
Elent News. Yeah, exactly. So the many armies, law, most Ukrainian soldiers are Nazis, invaded a country using Nazis to denazify them. I'm just saying, he did fucking deal with Wagner leadership. That's denazification. Point one for Putin. He did.
Its identity. And it came up with nothing better than to build this identity upon some false heroes who collaborated with Hitler.
I like that he was talking about Molotov-Ribbentrop and how that is a good justification for why Ukraine is actually Russian, like how Ukraine belongs to Russia. And now he's like, yeah, they had a lot of Nazi collaborators in Ukraine. Yeah, you know what they also had? A shit ton more people in the fucking Red Army. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's besides the point.
I have already said that in the early 19th century, when the theorists of independence and sovereignty of Ukraine appeared, they assumed that an independent Ukraine should have very good relations with Russia. But due to the historical development, those territories were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Poland, where Ukrainians were persecuted and treated quite brutally as well as were subject to cruel behavior. There were also attempts to destroy their identity. All this remained in the memory of the people. When World War II broke out, part of this extremely nationalist elite collaborated with Hitler, believing that he would bring them freedom. The German troops, even the SS troops, made Hitler's collaborators do the dirtiest work of exterminating the Polish and Jewish population. Hence this brutal massacre of the Polish and Jewish population, as well as the Russian population too.
How uncomfortable do you think Tucker is right now? It's like, fuck, man. This guy's going real hard on Nazis. I don't like this. Oh, God.
жестокая резня.
This was led by the persons who are well known, Bandera, Shukevich. It was those people who were made national heroes. That is the problem. And we are constantly told that nationalism and neo-Nazism exist in other countries as well. Yes, they are seedlings, but we uproot them, and other countries fight against them. But Ukraine is not the case. These people have been made into national heroes in Ukraine. Monuments to those people have been erected. They are
Okay. To be fair, I don't think Ukraine is the only country that has like propped up Nazi collaborators as like national heroes. There's a lot of countries that have done that. Like almost the entirety of the Western aligned world in some shape or another, even though they fought against the Nazis, very clearly, holy shit, Hasan is actually Nazi apologizing here? No, this is not Nazi apologia in any shape or form. The only country, Lamau, imagine thinking Putin is also not a Nazi. Does Hasan really think Putin is not a Nazi? Wait, what? This guy's broken, I think. I thought this guy was like pushing Z. Turns out he just thinks I'm not like going hard against Putin when I literally am going hard against Putin currently. You're all over the place, brother. You're fucking brain broken. How about you focus on the top of the hour ad break? Anyway, no chatter. Tucker is thinking Putin is not a Nazi, and he isn't okay with that. Listening comprehension is at an all-time low. Yeah, no, it's because like we're talking about this one thing that is like a lightning rod for the worst type of chatters to come in. But yeah, no, I didn't take your fucking silly ass Armenian genocide top of the hour debate because I saw that you were using hoggers right before then, and I knew immediately that the top of the hour ad break was going to be debated. So I clicked away. Okay, guess what? Suck me at the top of the hour. But if you don't want the top of the hour to suck, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. I did beat Tekken 8, yes.
displayed on flags. Their names are shouted by crowds that walk with torches, as it was in Nazi Germany. These were people who exterminated Poles, Jews, and Russians. It is necessary to stop this practice and prevent the dissemination of this concept. I say that Ukrainian
Dude, this is why I said it's so Israel of him. Okay? Like, it's annoying because there is truth to the problem of nationalism within Ukraine, football hooligans, Azov Battalion, and the Western world propping up those militant factions leading up to the Russian invasion. Okay? I've said all of this even before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, which many people used to get so mad at me over because like they were like, oh, dude, you are not supporting the cause. You think it's like justified to invade Ukraine when I very clearly said it's not justifiable to invade an entire fucking country because of nationalist elements. It's bullshit. All you're doing is galvanizing those nationalist elements and making them infinitely more popular, which in my opinion he did. But overall, it's the same like Israel ass argument to be like, yeah, dude, there's like Nazis there. We have to go and invade with our Nazis. Hooligans Lamau, bro, you serious? Yes, I am serious. Yes, football hooligans play a gigantic role in places like Ukraine. Yeah. No, what do you mean? Yeah. The fuck? Chatters be like, I don't understand. Like, I'm from fucking Iowa. I have never heard of like ultras they're national in every European country. Yeah, the difference is like when they join battalions and get armed and trained by the American government. That's when they are no longer just ultras, but also now a militant force, a paramilitary. Anyway, Lazio SS.
Are part of the
Israel's not the same though. No, what I was saying is like Israel's justification for like Hamas is that like they've eradicated any kind of secular leftist opposition to the Israeli apartheid. And then like the only thing that remains that violently is willing to resist the state of Israel is a more Islamist faction, an Islamist faction that is like the only one that remains. And they see that as a solid position to keep destroying Gaza destroying Gaza whenever they feel like it. And then they're like, yeah, these guys are actually anti-Semitic and they hate Jews. That's why. Then they're Nazis. That's why we have to go in and fucking kill every Palestinian. It's almost identical to Putin's platform. Obviously, like the 75-year occupation is a little different than like the Russian involvement in Ukraine, but the vibes are not dissimilar. I'm pro-Israel and pro-Russia, said no rational human ever. I don't think you've ever met a lot of Russian Israelis. That's number one. Okay. You are so stuck in like an American understanding that it's like either you're pro-Ukraine and pro-Israel or you're pro-Ukraine and pro-Palestinian. There are definitely a shit ton of pro-Israel, pro-Russia people. Rational is not a word he understands. I mean, okay. I don't think it's rational to be fucking pro-Ukraine and pro-Israel either, but it's a very commonly held position.
one Russian people. They say, no, we are a separate people. Okay, fine. If they consider themselves a separate people, they have the right to do so, but not on the basis of Nazism, the Nazi ideology.
Would you be satisfied with the territory that you have now?
Нет, закончим. Вы же задали вопрос по неонацизму и денацификации.
I will finish answering the question. You just asked a question about neo-Nazism and denazification. Look, the president of Ukraine visited Canada. This story is well known, but being silenced in the Western countries. The Canadian Parliament introduced a man who, as the Speaker of the Parliament said, fought against the Russians during the World War II. Well, who fought against the Russians during the World War II? Hitler and his accomplices. It turned out
this kind of shit is like, he's not wrong, and it fucking sucks because of the anti-communist sentiment in the West. They have legitimately aligned with like straight up fucking Nazis. Okay? It's just he's the worst person to say it, especially because he himself is currently engaging in, and they have not talked about this at all, by the way. It has been literally 59 fucking minutes, and not one single moment has been talked about like him killing a shit ton of people in Ukraine. Okay? Which is wild. 59 minutes, and we haven't gotten to a single fucking Ukrainian or Russian conscript death. Okay? You said back then that it would bite the West in the ass with the Canada Nazi. Of course. And it should, by the way. It's fucking ridiculous. And the only reason why we prop up these fucking Nazis over and over again is because they are the most rugged anti-communists. Okay? That was the historical reason as to why the Western world always aligned with Nazis post-World War II. Obviously, it's not a justification for invading Ukraine or anything like that, especially considering that he is an ultra-nationalist person engaging in violent actions. But it is, I don't know, it's just like that kind of stuff is important to reckon with. especially if you yourself are a rugged anti-communist, I guess.
Out that this man served in the SS troops. He personally killed Russians, Poles, and Jews. The SS troops consisted of Ukrainian nationalists who did this dirty work. The president of Ukraine stood up with the entire parliament of Canada and applauded this man. How can this be imagined? The president of Ukraine himself, by the way, is a Jew by nationality.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists. And so, true. And so...
Wait, Tucker is not... Wait, what? Tucker, whoa.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists.
Damn, he's being like, are they really Nazis? Is he going to hit that line? He's going to be like, are they really Nazis? Because, like, you know, the Nazi party doesn't exist anymore. So what's up?
And so, true. And so I think what you're saying is you want to extinguish or at least control Ukrainian nationalism. But how? How do you do that?
Вот послушайте меня. Ваш вопрос очень тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle, and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Of course.
Он, казалось бы, тонкий, он очень противный, этот вопрос.
This question appears to be subtle. It is quite pesky.
Значит,
You say Hitler has been dead for so many years, 80 years. But his example lives on. People who exterminated Jews, Russians, and Poles are alive. And the president, the current president of today's Ukraine, applauds him in the Canadian Parliament, gives a standing ovation. Can we say that we have completely uprooted this ideology if what we see is happening today? That is what denazification is.
God, it's such good fucking propaganda. God, the West is so dumb. Holy shit.
In our
Tucker Carlson is literally fucking playing the clip too.
We have to get rid of those people who maintain this concept and
once again, just a reminder that he has killed a shit ton of people in Ukraine, which, of course, has not been mentioned at all. And also, he's being interviewed by a literal neo-Nazi, okay? Vladimir Putin is currently being interviewed by a neo-Nazi who has hired neo-Nazis. Just pointing that out for the record. So, you know.
Support this practice and try to preserve it. That is what denazification is. That is what we mean.
Right. My question was a little more specific. It was, of course, not a defense of Nazis, neo or otherwise. It was a practical question. You don't control the entire country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you want to. So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology or feelings or a view of history in a country that you don't control? What do you do about that?
А вы знаете, как вам не покажется странным, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле...
You know, as strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level. Mr. Carlson, we agreed on that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process. And there's nothing humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is not, is it? That is it.
Bro, this is so funny. Yeah, Putin sucks, obviously, but you gotta see the irony a little bit of him straight up being like, it should be illegal to promote Nazism to Tucker Carlson, who can't really say anything about it for two reasons. One, because obviously he's there to like suck Putin's dick. And also Putin is not genuine about like denazification anyway. But like, regardless, one, he's there to suck his dick. Two, I feel like if he were to, you know, do the classic, like, what's going on? That's freedom of speech. Well, that's called freedom of speech, sir. He get hit with a fucking uranium dart. So it's really interesting. The dynamics here are very interesting. You got a guy who falsely is claiming that he's doing denazification when, you know, of course, that's not the case. Talking to another guy who very much is a Nazi.
Will there be talks, and why haven't there been talks about resolving the conflict in Ukraine? Peace talks.
They have been. They reached a very high stage of coordination of positions in a complex process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said, the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries, European countries, and the United States to fight Russia to the bitter end. Moreover, the president of Ukraine has legislated a ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with Russia. But how are we going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this? We know that he is putting forward some ideas about this settlement, but in order to agree on something, we need to have a dialogue. Is that not right?
Well, but you wouldn't be speaking to the Ukrainian president, you'd be speaking to the American president. When was the last time you spoke to Joe Biden?
I cannot remember when I talked to him. I do not remember. We can look it up.
You don't remember?
No. Why? Do I have to remember everything? I have my own things to do. We have domestic political affairs.
Well, he's funding the war that you're fighting, so I would think that would be memorable.
Dude, how can Tucker get away with this? Dude, I'm so jealous. I'm jealous, dude. Republicans can just like literally be like, Republicans unironically can say like, I hate America, and then still be like considered patriotic. I can't even fucking criticize America without 1,000 people saying I want to like strap myself with strap myself with TNT and blow myself up because I'm a terrorist Islamist fundamentalist. It's so fucked up. He literally is like talking to Putin and saying he's pro-Putin and that he's more pro-Putin than he is pro-Biden. What the fuck? I talked to a fucking Yemeni teenager with a TikTok account. Motherfucking liberals are like, yeah, dog. Yeah, I bet you love sucking terrorist cock, dude. You and your fucking anti-Semitic slaver terrorist Houthi pirates are trying to disrupt global commerce. I hope America blows both of you guys up. Tucker Carlson's over here literally being like, I hate America and I love Russia. Okay? Fuck. Relax. It's starting to sound like Alex Jones. I mean, I'm not wrong about what I just said. People do fucking say that I'm an Islamist fundamentalist, oligarch, neo-Ottomanist who denies the Armenian genocide and only has one note, and it's hating America, blah, 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 blah.
Well, yes, he funds, but I talked to him before the special military operation, of course. And I said to him then, by the way, I will not go into details, I never do, but I said to him then, I believe that you are making a huge mistake of historic proportions by supporting everything that is happening there, in Ukraine, by pushing Russia away. I told him repeatedly, by the way. I think that would be correct if I stop here.
What did he say?
Ask him, please. It is easier for you. You are a citizen of the United States. Go and ask him. It is not appropriate for me to comment on our conversation.
But you haven't spoken to him since before February of 2022?
No, we haven't spoken. Certain contacts are being maintained, though. Speaking of which, do you remember what I told you about my proposal to work together on a missile defense system?
Yes.
You can ask all of them. All of them are safe and sound, thank God. The former president, Condoleezza, is safe and sound, and I think Mr. Gates and the current director of the intelligence agency, Mr. Burns, the then ambassador to Russia, in my opinion, are very successful ambassador. They were all witnesses to these conversations. Ask them. Same here. If you are interested in what Mr. President Biden responded to me, ask him. At any rate, I talked to him about it.
I'm definitely interested, but from the outside, it seems like this could devolve or evolve into something that brings the entire world into conflict and could initiate a nuclear launch. And so why don't you just call Biden and say, let's work this out?
What's there to work out? It's very simple. I repeat. We have contacts through various agencies. I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, You need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms. Before you do that, stop. What's easier? Why would I call him? What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what messages do you get back?
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid, please don't. What is there to talk about?
Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious fact.
Come on, dog. An imaginary Russian threat? The fuck? Dude. Like, what? Is he just saying that, like, Russia never invaded Ukraine or something? Like, what the fuck's going on? Is he just like, yeah, all the territories we annexed is actually Russian territory to begin with? So we technically invaded ourselves? Like, is that what he's saying? The fuck? I don't understand it. The invasion isn't real. It's a figment of your imagination. All of the people that have died on the Russian side, on the Ukrainian side, it's like not real, actually. That's not real at all.
And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people.
Not going to invade, by the way, said the guy one day before invading with 200K troops on the border, but Russian threat is imaginary. Yeah, I don't understand what, like he's saying imaginary Russian threat, and it's like how would that be imaginary? He's saying that there won't be a war beyond Ukraine. Oh, yeah. I don't think you can. I mean, I don't think that you can do that. I don't think that he has the capabilities of doing that, which I think a lot of other countries also very quickly realize, which is why they dropped the fake neutrality agreements or anything like that, and joined NATO. Bro, he can't even invade Ukraine. I mean, he obviously can't say that. He can't be like, we can barely do a decent job holding Ukrainian positions. We're not going to go into Poland. Like, don't worry.
Analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people, understand perfectly well that this is a fake. They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest. It's just threat-mongering.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, Latvians are so hype right now that they got mentioned. They're like, fuck yeah, dude, we're here. Hell yeah, baby. It's like Moldova mention. Very extra rare Latvia mention. Let's go. Latvia, rise up. He made the Russia threat perception very real. This is the issue. That's why Finland and Sweden joined NATO. This is another L. He didn't want a massive NATO border, so he invaded and caused Russia to have a massive NATO border. I mean, I think the real reason why Finland and Sweden did the dual agreement with NATO isn't because he just invaded Ukraine. I think it's because he invaded Ukraine and failed. Because if he had actually rolled through Ukraine, then, yes, there's a very real fear for Finland to potentially join NATO, but that fear also translates to the fear that Russia might retaliate to them. It's the worst of both worlds for Russia in this situation, because not only did they justify fears that other countries might have that Russia might invade them, but he also did it in a way where he failed. So that is precisely the reason why I think Finland felt strong enough to be able to drop the neutrality and join NATO, because what are they going to do? Fucking go and invade? Yeah, Putin literally threatened Sweden and Finland. Like, we forget now, but there was definitely very valid threats against Sweden and Finland, at least in the beginning. You actually think he wanted to invade them? Come on, bro. No, I don't. But I do think that if there was a more successful special military operation in Ukraine, if they were able to take out like all the anti-aircraft, all of the anti-aircraft guns. Okay. Oh shit. My mom is texting me. If they were able to do all of that, if they were able to like take over more territory, if they were able to successfully take over Ukraine, even though that annexation would have been virtually impossible to uphold. Sorry, I had to unlock my door. If they were able to do all of that, then Finland would be at least a little bit more concerned with threats from Russia. When they saw that their hands are busy and they're incredibly occupied with like taking over even the eastern positions of Ukraine, that threat basically died. Do you understand? What the fuck is going on, man? Anyway.
Ukraine, he has territorial aims across the continent, and you're saying unequivocally you don't.
Surely it is incredibly reductive to say that the invasion was stupid because it legitimizes NATO. The existence of NATO as an imperialist alliance is already the status quo in the global north. Yes, I'm simply stating that it basically gave more popular support amongst the populations in European countries to feel like their NATO alliances were valid. And it also showed countries like Finland and countries like Sweden that previously had dual neutrality agreements with Russia that Russia is not capable of actually harming them if they were to join NATO. Someone just threatened you in chat. People threaten me all the time, brother. You know, they got to join a long, long line of people that want to kill me. If Russia was able to demonstrate more military competence, I guess, if Russia was able to demonstrate better military competence and actually annex Ukraine, let's say, in a hypothetical scenario, take out their anti-aircraft weapons, immediately have air superiority, and you know, just march their troops all the way to the Polish border or whatever. At that point, if they were able to steamroll through Ukraine, then their ground invasion capabilities would be genuinely scary for a country like Finland. Therefore, they would most likely not be as like the threat of a Russian invasion, if it's a credible one, is the reason why countries will maintain neutrality, is what I'm trying to say. Once that threat is eliminated because of an actual fucking, because you actually saw that they failed in Ukraine, then they're much more ready to join NATO.
Это абсолютно исключено.
It is absolutely out of the question. You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some kind of a global war.
Глобальная война поставить на грань.
And a global war will bring all humanity to the brink of destruction. It's obvious.
Вот, и есть, конечно, средства.
There are certainly means of deterrence. They have been scaring everyone with us all along. Tomorrow Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Tomorrow Russia will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what?
Выбить из налогоплательщиков
In order to extort additional money from US taxpayers and European taxpayers in the confrontation with Russia in the Ukrainian theater of war. The goal is to weaken Russia as much as possible.
One of our senior United States senators from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer, said yesterday, I believe, that we...
Yeah, what's up, Tucker? Go ahead. Explain why that's a bad thing to your audience. This is why I mean it's like very odd for him to have this conversation, because it's like if you describe to Republicans what the liberal position is on Russia on terms that are not uncertain, they probably would be like, yeah, okay, it's not a bad idea, actually. Russia is scary. They're communists. And that's why taking down their military by throwing Ukrainians in the fucking fire pit is probably not the worst idea. You know what I mean? Like, I know that there's a lot of political polarization in this country, but the bipartisan support for American foreign policy exists for a reason. Right wingers are very reactionary against America's foreign adversaries that they have been conditioned into hating for their whole lives. That's why I find it really funny that there's like a pro-Russian contingency amongst the right, because they're like, they went their whole lives with the Red Scare propaganda, thinking that these guys are going to come and invade, you know? And then all of a sudden, through like one Telegram group, they immediately were able to rewrite all of that Red Scare propaganda and now are pro-Russia because Russia is like anti-trans. So fucking stupid.
We have to continue.
Like, you got to be extra dumb to be able to rewrite everything in your brain, rewire everything in your brain with like one Telegram group.
To fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
Это провокация.
This is a provocation, and a cheap provocation at that.
Американские солдаты должны воевать.
I do not understand why American soldiers should fight in Ukraine. There are mercenaries from the United States there. The bigger number of mercenaries comes from Poland, with mercenaries from the United States in second place and mercenaries from Georgia in third place.
Безусловно.
Well, if somebody has the desire to send regular troops, that would certainly bring humanity to the brink of very serious global conflict. This is obvious. Do the United States need this? What for?
Национальной территории. У вас нечем заниматься.
Thousands of miles away from your national territory.
На границе полно. Проблемы с...
Don't you have anything better to do? You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt, more than $33 trillion. You have nothing better to...
Dude, he is so good at being a right-wing commentator in America. It's crazy. Like, he literally just hit like 3 lines that you hear on Fox News. He knows all the American talking points. He's such a fucking good hog. He's oinking. Oh my Lord.
To do so, you should fight in Ukraine?
Понимая ситуацию, которая складывается.
Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia, make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today, realizing that Russia will fight for its interests to the end?
Здравому смыслу.
And realizing this, actually return to common sense, start respecting our country and its interests, and look for certain solutions.
Это гораздо умнее.
It seems to me that this is much smarter and more rational.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have
Why are they having so much fun? They're yucking it up, dude. Big time, okay? I jokingly refer to Vladimir Putin as Pootie Poo, but like, I feel like this is ultra nationalist Riz, you know what I mean? Like they're straight up flirting.
I did not blow up
То есть
Nord
у вас-
Stream.
у
Thank
вас-
you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби. У вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
Знаете,
You know, I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion.
This is a really interesting time to reveal this, but Sweden has closed the investigation of the pipeline blast, but stays silent on the cause. The natural gas connection was sabotaged in September 2022, 7 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, prompting rampant speculation about who's to blame. Remember when everybody was yelling at me, another fucking history will vindicate me moment? Oh my Lord. Remember that one? Remember how quickly, it was actually an exercise in collective psychosis, in my opinion, how quickly liberals will immediately adopt a position, no matter how insane it sounds, where they were like, oh, it must have been Russia. It must have been Russia that blew up its own pipeline. And there were unironically hella people. There were unironically hella people repeating that when it made no fucking sense whatsoever. There were so many people. I don't think people still believe that, but you're believing Putin law? See, dude, this is like the brother, I'm believing the New York Times. What the fuck? No, I don't have to believe Putin, dumbass. What are you talking about? I have eyes, ears, a brain. The fuck? Why is it that Sweden did not reveal who did it? America basically admitted that it was Ukrainian-aligned actors. Sweden closed the investigation and did not reveal who did it because they were like, oh shit, I don't know. Have you considered the bad guys can be never correct about anything? Exactly. They didn't reveal because the question of jurisdiction was more complicated than where the crime had been committed. Yeah. Yeah. That's why they didn't reveal it. They just couldn't. Bro, I'm sorry. If it was Russia, they would not give a fuck about jurisdiction, okay? I guess we'll never know. Anyway, who knows? I guess it just kind of did it. Dude, pipelines. Hey, pipeline expert here. Pipelines only do this when they're under severe stress. So it's not funny nor cute, okay? It just kind of did it on its own.
These two.
You're using prejudice, not logic. If you knew exactly who did it, but I won't. If you knew exactly who did it, but I won't tell. Yeah, I'm using prejudice, not logic, when I say that it is prejudicely not remotely sound to blow up your own pipeline. That is like your major point of leverage for European like a stress point and a leverage point for your allegiance with Europe.
Two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable of doing it?
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever, and it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media.
Bro, they literally full-throatedly immediately said Russia must have blown up its own pipeline. Like, that was such a major holy shit moment. Like, it made no logical sense whatsoever. And everyone just kind of went along with it. Okay. You're treating Russia like a monolith. There's been power struggles in Russia, oligarchs falling out of windows, Dugin's daughter killed by a car bomb, the Wagner rebellion. Yeah. This is one of your bad takes. The U.S. avoided direct involvement in escalation in Ukraine. It's not our style to commit essentially an act of war against Europe. Ukraine is going off the reservation makes more sense. Wait, I never... What do you mean? I said that it was... If you think that there was no involvement in Ukraine and it was just Ukrainian actors in and of itself, you're still admitting that it wasn't Russia. And that's really odd. Unless you were trying to say, you said the U.S. is most likely responsible. It's not our style. Yes, I said U.S. or U.S. trained actors or U.S. involvement is absolutely, in my honest assessment, is absolutely the most likely scenario. But it's the same opinion that I have for like the Contras. You know what I mean? Would you say that the Contras do not have any U.S. involvement in their actions? Do you think that they were just operating on their own? You know what I mean? Also, the idea that it's not our style is so dumb. It is absolutely our style. Yeah, it was a Ukrainian sabotage group, and the Poles likely knew the boat reportedly set off from their coastline and basically ignored it, it seems. Yeah. It absolutely is our style. It's like perfectly aligned with our style. What's also crazy is still people turning around and immediately, like, I think you're forgetting my major point of contention here is that people immediately went with the least rational option, which is Russia must have done it to itself. Like, that's insane to me. The amount of people that just lap that up, I cannot overcome. Like, I cannot. It was so nuts. Seymour Hersh revealed information. Sure, he's a little bit old now, and immediately people were dunking on him. They were saying he's like Russian. He's a Russian op. It's like Russian-backed rebels of the BUK missile system who shot down the passenger plane a decade ago. Did Putin order or intend that? Wait, what? Dude, how are you comparing these two things? That's insane to compare these two things. Russia is in active conflict at this point with, and the pipeline is a major point of leverage for them. Like, the likelihood that this was some Russian actor inside of the state is crazy.
The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that? So it is possible to get involved in this work, but it is cost prohibitive, so to speak. We can simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results. It is clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly. It's true.
Yes, but here's a question you may be able to answer. You worked in Germany, famously. The Germans clearly know that their NATO partner did this, and it damaged their economy greatly. It may never recover. Why are they being silent about it? That's very confusing to me. Why wouldn't the Germans say something about it?
This also confuses me. But today's German leadership is guided by the interests of the collective West rather than its national interests. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the logic of their action or inaction. After all, it is not only about Nord Stream 1, which was blown up, and the Nord Stream 2 was damaged. But one pipe is safe and sound, and gas can be supplied to Europe through it. But Germany does not open it. We are ready, please. There's another route through Poland, called Yamal Europe, which also allows for large flow. Poland has closed it, but Poland pecks from the German hand. It receives money from the pan-European funds, and Germany is the main donor to these pan-European funds. Germany feeds Poland to a certain extent, and they close their route to Germany. Why? I don't understand. Ukraine, to which the Germans supply weapons and give money. Germany is the second sponsor of the United States in terms of financial aid to Ukraine. There are two gas routes through Ukraine. They simply closed one route, the Ukrainians. Open the second route and please get gas from Russia. They do not open it. Why don't the Germans say, look guys, we give you money and weapons, open up the valve, please, let the gas from Russia pass through for us. We're buying liquefied gas at exorbitant prices in Europe, which brings the level of our competitiveness and economy in general down to zero.
Yeah, now he's speaking to all of the fucking far right EU audience, as far as saying like Germany's cucked by America. We want to give Germany oil and gas. Your gas bills are cooked because of the United States of America. Now he's hitting the fucking right-wing European audiences too.
You want us to give you money. Let us have the decent existence.
Dude,
make money.
He's a very good propagandist. Like, again, we are now 1 hour and 15 minutes into this interview where not a single mention of Ukrainian invasion, not a single mention of the casualties, how that's going, what the plans are for the future. It's crazy. He's just basically using Tucker Carlson as a bounce board to telegraph all of his ideas and communicate all of his ideas to a different, various far-right groups.
For our economy, because this is where the money we give you comes from. They refuse to do so. Why? Ask them. That is what is like in their heads. Those are highly incompetent people.
Well, maybe the world is breaking
take
into
Kai
two hemispheres, one with cheap energy, the other without. And I want to ask you that. If we're now a multipolar world, obviously we are, can you describe the blocks of alliances? Who is in each side, do you think?
Listen, you have said that the world is breaking into two hemispheres. A human brain is divided into two hemispheres. One is responsible for one type of activities, the other one is more about creativity and so on. But it is still one and the same head. The world should be a single whole. Security should be shared rather than meant for the golden billion. That is the only scenario where the world could be stable, sustainable, and predictable. Until then, while the head is split in two parts, it is an illness, a serious adverse condition. It is a period of severe disease that the world is going through now. But I think that, thanks to honest journalism, this work is akin to work of the doctors. This could somehow be remedied.
Well, let's just give one example, the US dollar, which has kind of united the world in a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the reserve currency, the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership. The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world. Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission. Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake. Look at what is going on in the world.
The brain rot over this interview on Twitter is insane. What do you mean? Remember when we thought we weren't going to watch the whole thing? I didn't think I was going to watch the whole thing, but honestly, it's pretty solid. Like, how did Tucker manage to get an interview with Putin? Easy. He is a very obvious propagandist. Also, the timing of this interview is also kind of interesting because it's coming on the heels of like Zelensky. It's coming on the heels of like America obviously changing its direction and attitude about Ukraine, not wanting to give more money to Ukraine. It's also happening as like Zelensky fired his general. It's a really interesting time to like disseminate this level of propaganda to the Western world because it really drives home. It really works actively to divide Western audiences. If you're a right winger, you watch this interview, I suspect you're not going to look at this and go, yeah, this guy's a fucking bloodthirsty monster who we have to keep funding money and give money to Ukraine. Like, he presents himself very well, obviously, because he is a really good propagandist, and it's not it's not too terrible that for him that like Tucker Carlson is eating his dick. What, Zelensky and the whole of Western media spoke of a night of the long knives in Ukraine. Seriously, this is not wrong. Wait, what do you mean? How much of the money we gave to Ukraine was cash and how much was in military equipment? I don't know what the exact percentage breakdown is, but it's really funny that people think that we're just like giving bags of cash to Ukraine. We have given a lot of cash to Ukraine for economic development, but a lot of the fucking money that we give to Ukraine is just money being recycled back into the military industrial complex that is now able to send all of their refurbished and older fucking weapons. It's just equipment. When we say we're giving, $10 billion to Ukraine, it's not fucking actually bags of cash. That would probably be less damaging overall for the ecosystem, okay? It's actually just straight weapons. And yes, a lot of those old equipment and a lot of the old weapons that we send them is also not exactly accounted for perfectly either. But yeah, it's just, I think Americans just like misunderstand that. You know what I mean? Sabanja Holdings, lol. Dude, this is so funny. Yes, brother. Yes, my dad was a vice president at a fucking holding group like 25 years ago. What the fuck is this? These dudes like try to dox my family members and not even do a good job at it. Like, what do you mean? What is this, an own? I've always talked about this shit, dumb fuck. It's so stupid. They also literally think that like the entire holding group's like wealth is my dad's or something. That he's like a fucking billionaire. They're so stupid. Like, that's the new Hasan bad line. It's so wild to just be like, damn, dog, I can't believe your dad worked at a fucking holding group. Like, they're so dumb. They're so fucking dumb. Four-channers are not the smartest people. I know. They literally think that I'm like personally a fucking billionaire trust fund kid. It's so fucking stupid. If I was a trust fund kid billionaire, why the fuck would I be doing this here? And not only that, but also, I mean, I assist my family now with finances. So that's also additionally funny that they're like, wow, dude, your dad's a billionaire. It's like, no, dog. I wish. Wouldn't be having to put up with your fucking bullshit online. Anyway, yeah, I'm the only multi-billionaire generational fucking oligarch that spends 8 to 10 hours every fucking day online getting yelled at by literally the most mentally ill cyber stalkers that have ever existed on the fucking planet.
Even the United States.
It's just sad because like so much of it is just like pure mental illness and they don't recognize it. I don't know what to do. It's like, bro, snap out of it, please. Fucking snap out of it. You're not sane.
Allies
or
are
sound.
now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars and euros. US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third countries, while currently it is down to 13%. It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar. We had no such intention. It was decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars. I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world. By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%. Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles, and about as much, a little over 34% in yuan. Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit. They probably thought it would lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments for oil in yuan. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this? What are you doing? You are cutting yourself off. All experts say this. Ask any intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US.
But
You're killing it with your own hands.
I think that's I think it's a fair assessment. The question is what comes next, and maybe you trade one colonial power for another, much less sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean, is the BRICS, for example, in danger of being?
Damn, dude. Does he? It's kind of wild that a guy who has spent every waking moment shitting on China has to sit there and eat the Chinese dick too. Not only is he eating Russian dick, but he has to sit there and also eat Chinese dick. Is that not a bridge too far for you, Tucker? God damn. All kinds of dick eating going on here. Nice, dude.
Being completely dominated by the Chinese economy, in a way that's not good for their sovereignty. Do you worry about that?
It's also funny because he's like talking about anti-colonialism and shit when talking about China. Yeah, end BRICS colonialism. Oh, BRICS. I love that. Yeah.
Well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story. We're neighbors with China. You cannot choose neighbors just as you cannot choose close relatives. We share a border of 1,000 kilometers with them. This is number one. Second, we have a centuries-long history of coexistence. We're used to it. Third, China's foreign policy philosophy is not aggressive. Its idea is to always look for compromise, and we can see that. The next point is as follows. We are always told the same boogeyman story, and here it goes again. Through an euphemistic form, but it is still the same boogeyman story. The cooperation with China keeps increasing. The pace at which China's cooperation with Europe is growing is higher and greater than that of the growth of Chinese-Russian cooperation. Ask Europeans, aren't they afraid? They must.
No, BRICS bros come from the same place of just like genuinely failing to understand how the global economy operates. Whether it's like a right-wing guy who's like, oh man, de-dollarization, brother, BRICS is happening. And same for, are you having a seizure? No, Kaya is, I have a chew toy in my hand and Kaya's pulling on it. And the same thing goes for like leftists who also fantasize about this like weird allegiance between fucking Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa, which was just included specifically so that it makes more sense. Like it's easier to say instead of brick.
Might be, I don't know. But they are still trying to access China's market at all costs, especially now that they are facing economic problems. Chinese businesses are also exploring the European market.
Or was it Saudi Arabia? Sorry.
Do Chinese businesses have small presence in the
South
United
Africa.
States? Yes, the political decisions are such that they are trying to limit their cooperation with China. It is to your own detriment, Mr. Tucker, that you are limiting cooperation with China. You are hurting yourself. It is a delicate matter, and there are no silver bullet solutions. Just
Damn! He's like, yo, eat this Chinese dick. Eat the Chinese dick right now. Go ahead. Say you love China. Say you love China. He's got him in an arm bar going, come on. Come on. Say it, bitch. Get the fucking polonium dart. Get the polonium dart. Say you like China right now.
as it is with the dollar.
It's like weird because I obviously I fucking hate Vladimir Putin. However, I also really hate Tucker Carlson. So like, and Tucker Carlson is so bitch made here. Like he is being made to be a bitch. Okay. In this interview, he has to like sit there. He has to sit there and straight up just do whatever the fuck Vladimir Putin tells him. Okay, you're the cock watching, goddamn. All I'm saying is, oh, look at it. She got height. She got hops. Come on, get it. Oh. Anyway, look at his pained expression. Yeah, he's like, bro, you got to do cooperation with China. Yeah, it's funny because like here's the thing. Here's what I will say. How do you benefit from your rich father, but then LARP as a socialist? I wish I benefited more from my rich father, and LARP as a socialist, straight up. Here's the thing I was gonna say. Hasan viewers right for China? No. The thing I was gonna say is this. When not talking about all of the very obvious faults and all of the very obvious failures and all the violent suppression, authoritarianism, corruption, of course, the invasion of Ukraine, like all the bad shit, when the conversation simply surrounds like American action and how bad it is for the world, or like normal allegiances, things of that nature, like or countries aligning with one another. Basically, in that circumstance, like he comes across very normal, like a coherent dude. But of course, when you allow Putin to steer the fucking interview in that direction, which is what Tucker is doing here. I fell for some tweet that was old. Biden isn't running for presidency. That's so funny. Like, so you say you would not stream if you had that much money, so you're only in it for the money? Yes, dude. Yes, you got it. You got it. You caught me. That's what I meant. Oh my God. Oh my God. Why are you holding a yellow cock ring? You think that's it's very nice of you to say. People need to stop doing really lazy top of the hour ad break debates like that one chatter, because at the top of the hour, you just got to let it happen. Okay? You just got to let it happen. At the top of the hour, there's a cock of the hour. Okay? And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free. Now, obviously, because I'm an oligarch, I don't see any of the ads, because I've paid for all the Twitch streams that I watch as the son of an oligarch and an oligarch myself. Hopefully, maybe you'll get lucky by another oligarch who'll give you a sub, but here's a 3-minute ad break now.
So, before introducing any illegitimate sanctions, illegitimate in terms of the Charter of the United Nations, one should think very carefully. For decision makers, this appears to be a problem.
I think the better way to answer that would be, so what if, even if I did have a rich father, even if that were the case, does that mean I can't be a socialist now? I'm disqualified? Yeah, I know. It's like so dumb to be like, huh, dude, imagine you come from a rich family and you're a socialist. What a fucking meme. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you want to crawl under my boots? Is that what you want? Let's say I am a fucking oligarch, okay? Let's say I am an oligarch. Let's say I'm a neo-Ottomanist oligarch, secretly. Thank you, King Henry the Fourth, for the 50 get the subs. It's like, what's the expectation? That you think like you should grovel and beg for my forgiveness as I tell you about how like this structure is actually perfectly good and valid? It's so strange. It's such a weird thing to just fucking constantly harp on, and it makes no sense. You're not addressing anything that I'm saying, and you're simply trying to like bait hypocrisy where no such hypocrisy exists. Right? It's a weird surf-brained ass approach to just be like, wow, dude, fucking guy, he's rich, and he thinks the situation, the organization, the economic organization we exist under is kind of fucked up. It makes no sense. It makes no goddamn sense. Okay? You want me to basically be like an Andrew Tate style person when you say that. If my finances have changed dramatically over the course of the past 10 years. My positions, on the other hand, have not. Why is it that you want you know, why is it that you want me to change with my finances and like start advocating for my best interest, I guess, or what you suspect is my best interest? It also doesn't really make sense as far as like what my goals are. Like they think I'm doing this to make money. It's like, what? You want me to, you think I want to play on expert difficulty as an oligarch? Is that why? You think I'm like, it's the same energy as people being like, Hasan, you're secretly racist. It's like, yeah, dude. That's why I dedicate a whole lot of time to anti-racist propaganda so I can make it extra hard for all the people around me that'll constantly catch me in my moments where I am being racist. I like it. You know? It was a left of center take. And you should play the Mark Cuban clip. And I hate Mark Cuban, but he was definitely like, it's luck, I should pay taxes. Yeah. Yeah. Classic famous son of an oligarch, donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to strike funds and unions, actively promoting unionization. If this shit was a grift, I could grift way better on this side of the political equation, okay? On this side of the spectrum, I'd be grifting up a fucking storm. You know? That's it.
So you said a moment ago that the world would be a lot better if it weren't broken into competing alliances, if there was cooperation globally. One of the reasons you don't have that is because the current American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new administration after Joe Biden that you would be able to reestablish communication with the US government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
I will tell you, but let me finish the previous thought. We, together with my colleague and friend, President Xi Jinping, set a goal to reach $200 billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our bilateral trade with China totals already $230 billion, and the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing. Our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high-tech, energy, scientific research and development. It is very balanced. As for BRICS, where Russia took over the presidency this year, the BRICS countries are, by and large, developing very rapidly. Look, if memory serves me right, back in 1992, the share of the G7 countries in the world economy amounted to 47%. Whereas in 2022, it was down to, I think, a little over 30%. The BRICS countries accounted for only 16% in 1992, but now their share is greater than that of the G7. It has nothing to do with the events in Ukraine. This is due to the trends of global development and world economy, as I mentioned just now. And this is inevitable. This will keep happening. It is like the rise of the sun. You cannot prevent the sun from rising. You have to adapt to it. How do the United States adapt? With the help of force, sanctions, pressure, bombings, and use of armed forces. This is about self-conceit.
I usually skip this part. When do they get to the sex? Brother, if you don't recognize that this has been a 1 hour and 26 minutes of straight fucking, I don't know what to tell you. Vladimir Putin has been fucking Tucker Carlson, okay? Straight up. Sexual intercourse, baby. It's already happening.
Your political establishment does not understand that the world is changing under objective circumstances. And in order to preserve your level, even if someone aspires, pardon me, to the level of dominance, you have to make the...
For people saying, well, Tucker Carlson seems really good at this, it's because, one, he's literally had multiple decades of experience at doing this in particular. And two, while he is a piece of shit personally, so is America. So he has a shit ton to talk about with respect to what America's involvement in the world is. So he could just sit there and constantly chirp about America all day, every day, and kind of still be in the right. even though he himself is engaging in a shit ton of America-style activities. That's the problem. So in situations like this, you have one of two options. You just immediately watch this and you get and you, I guess, figure out where your perspective is. And you go, okay, you know what? I've realized that, like, well, fuck Tucker Carlson. Everything he's saying is wrong because he's a bad guy. So he must be also wrong on a lot of the stuff that he's saying with respect to America. Okay. And I think a lot of liberals do that. They see this and they go, oh, he's talking to Tucker Carlson. They're in agreement. I hate all these guys. I hate Putin. And so I guess I'm pro-America. Like, I agree with the things that America's doing because Putin is saying that they're bad.
Right decisions in a competent and timely manner. Such brutal actions, including with regard to Russia and, say, other countries, are counterproductive. This is an obvious fact. It has already become evident. You just asked me if another leader comes and changes something. It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia, too. I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest to open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader, it is about the elite's mindset. If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages that the U.S. still has.
He hated Obama for some reason. Brother, he does not like Democrats. I mean, I think the last Democrat that he was he said like remotely positive things about was Bill Clinton. And even then he was like, he was still like, he's not, I mean, dude, he's a fucking right-wing hyper nationalist. That's it. He literally, well, one, he's talking to Tucker Carlson. So of course he's going to say like nice things about Republicans because he wants his Tucker Carlson's Republican audience to like him. No, I don't think he's just playing to the audience. I think he does think that, like, he probably vibes better with the likes of George Bush and Trump. Democrats have like this. Democrats are just as reactionary when it comes to foreign policy as the Republicans are, but they don't have that like cowboy gunslinger style. They have this like elitist approach to right-wing foreign policy where they're like, we're doing this and we're doing it for you. It's actually a good thing that we're invading whatever country we're invading type shit. Maybe that's annoying. I don't know.
Today, and perhaps something may change.
Very snobby.
Look, China's economy has become the first economy in the world in purchasing power parity. In terms of volume, it overtook the US a long time ago. The USA comes second, then India, 1.5 billion people, and then Japan, with Russia in the 5th place. Russia was the first economy in Europe last year, despite all the sanctions and restrictions. Is it normal from your point of view? Sanctions, restrictions, impossibility of payments in dollars, being cut off from SWIFT services, sanctions against our ships carrying oil, sanctions against airplanes, sanctions in everything, everywhere. The largest number of sanctions in the world which are applied against Russia. And we have become Europe's first economy during this time. The tools that US uses don't work. Well, one has to think about what to do. If this realization comes to the ruling elites, then yes, then the first person of the state will act in anticipation of what the voters and the people who make decisions at various levels expect from this person. Then maybe something will change.
But you're describing two different systems. You say that the leader acts in the interest of the voters, but you also say these decisions are not made by the leader, they're made by the ruling classes. You've run this country for so long, you've known all these American presidents. What are those power centers in the United States, do you think? Like, who actually makes the decisions?
I don't know. America is a complex country, conservative on one hand, rapidly changing on the other. It's not easy for us to sort it all out. Who makes decisions in the elections? Is it possible to understand this when each state has its own legislation?
Yeah, because he's not a fucking socialist. That's why, bro. He's like, oh, I don't know. Who does?
Each state regulates itself. Someone can be excluded from elections at the state level. It is a two-stage electoral system. It is very difficult for us to understand it. Certainly, there are two parties that are dominant, the Republicans and the Democrats. And within this party system, the centers that make decisions, that prepare decisions. Then, look, why, in my opinion, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such an erroneous, crude, completely unjustified policy of pressure was pursued against Russia? After all, this is a policy of pressure. NATO expansion, support for the separatists in Caucasus, creation of a missile defense system. These are all elements of pressure. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Then, dragging Ukraine into NATO is all about pressure, pressure, pressure. Why? I think, among other things, because excessive production capacities were created. During the confrontation with the Soviet Union, there were many centers created and specialists on the Soviet Union who could not do anything else. They convinced the political leadership that it is necessary to continue chiseling Russia, to try to break it up, to create on this territory several quasi-state entities, and to subdue them in a divided form, to use their combined potential for the future struggle with China. This is a mistake, including the excessive potential of those who worked for the confrontation with the Soviet Union. It is necessary to get rid of this. There should be new, fresh forces.
The mistake to pressure Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, or should we have brought them into the fold? No, he's saying, like, he would have been a willing participant in Western hegemony if they were brought into the fold after the dissolution of the USSR. That's what he's saying.
People who look into the future and understand what is happening in the world. Look at how Indonesia is developing. 600 million people. Where can we get away from that? Nowhere.
He was the West's darling. What is he blabbering about? I mean, Russia has been presented as a foreign adversary, not immediately after the dissolution of the USSR, but I mean, I would say that it's like in almost perpetuity. Yeah, it's just like we looted it and then booted it, even though Vladimir Putin is like our guy, or was our guy. The notion that there was like any kind of there was any kind of like pro-Russia sentiment ever is I don't know. It's just, it's always been a very effective, way to keep pumping reactionary sentiment and have them portray them as a foreign adversary.
We just have to assume that Indonesia will enter, it is already in, the club of the world's leading economies, no matter who likes it or dislikes it. Yes, we understand and are aware that in the United States, despite all the economic problems, the situation is still normal, with the economy growing decently. The GDP is growing by 2.5%, if I'm not mistaken. But if we want to ensure the future, then we need to change our approach to what is changing. As I already said, the world would nevertheless change, regardless of how the developments in Ukraine end. The world is changing. In the United States themselves, experts are writing that the United States are nonetheless gradually changing their position in the world. It is your experts who write that. I just read them. The only question is how this would happen, painfully and quickly, or gently and gradually. And this is written by people who are not anti-American. They simply follow global development trends. That's it. And in order to assess them and change policies, we need people who think, look forward, can analyze and recommend certain decisions at the level of political leaders.
I just have to ask, you've said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. It's a threat to your country. Right before you sent troops into Ukraine, the Vice President of the United States went to the Munich Security Conference and encouraged the President of Ukraine to join NATO. Do you think that
Putin and rambling interview barely lets Tucker Carlson get a word in? I think they're just, this analysis is probably to like, to get a liberal audience that's not going to watch 2 hours to just be like, yeah, this sucked. I mean, it's definitely this, like Republicans that do actually watch this are going to be like, they're going to get the message being that Vladimir Putin is our guy. Doesn't seem like a bad guy at all. I'm actually shocked that he hasn't like hyped up more of the anti-trans sentiment. You know what I mean? Like he hasn't done more of like the anti-queer stuff. But maybe that's like for the last half or last half hour. I don't know.
That was an effort to provoke you into military action.
I repeat once again, we have repeatedly proposed to seek a solution to the problems that arose in Ukraine after 2014 coup d'etat through peaceful means. But no one listened to us. And moreover, the Ukrainian leaders who were under the complete US control suddenly declared that they would not comply with the Minsk agreements. They disliked everything there and continued military activity in that territory. And in parallel, that territory was being exploited by NATO military structures under the guise of various personnel training and retraining centers. They essentially began to create bases there, that's all. Ukraine announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality, while passing the laws that limit the rights of non-titular nationalities in Ukraine. Ukraine, having received all the southeastern territories as a gift from the Russian people, suddenly announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality in that territory. Is that normal?
So is Putin's goal to combat Russia hysteria in the USA via pandering to conservatives for what purpose? One, always to destabilize, and two, I think he recognizes that he's never going to get the liberals to fucking stop funding Ukraine, but he can definitely get a bunch of like Republicans with isolationist policies that also hate the Brandon agenda anyway. They hate the Brandon regime, that associate like actions in Ukraine with Joe Brandon. He can get those guys to just be like anti-funding Ukraine. It's actually pretty interesting as far as like what his tactics are. It's also an election year too, so that's the other reason.
All this put together led to the decision to end the war that neo-Nazis started in Ukraine in 2014.
Do you think Zelensky has the freedom to negotiate a settlement to this conflict?
I don't know the details. Of course, it's difficult for me to judge. But I believe he has, in any case, he used to have. His father fought against the fascists, Nazis, during World War II. I once talked to him about this. I said, Volodya, what are you doing? Why are you supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine today, while your father fought against fascism? He was a frontline soldier. I will not tell you what he answered. This is a separate topic, and I think it's incorrect for me to do so. But as to the freedom of choice, why not? He came to power on the expectations of Ukrainian people that he would lead Ukraine to peace. He talked about this. It was thanks to this that he won the elections overwhelmingly. But then, when he came to power, in my opinion, he realized two things. Firstly, it is better not to clash with neo-Nazis and nationalists, because they are aggressive and very active. You can expect anything from them. And secondly, the US-led West supports them and will always support those who antagonize with Russia. It is beneficial and safe. So he took the relevant position despite promising his people to end the war in Ukraine. He deceived his voters.
But do you think at this point, as of February 2024, he has the latitude, the freedom to speak with you or your government directly about putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world? Can he do that, do you think?
Ну, а почему нет? Он же
Why
считается
not?
главой государства.
He considers himself head of
Мы
state.
считаем в
He
России,
won
что
the
всё, что
elections.
произошло после 2014
Although we believe in
года,
Russia that the coup d'etat is the
периодически
primary
устойчивые
source of
власти
power for
наступают.
everything
И в
that
этом
happened
смысле
after
Российская власть
2014.
является ущербной.
And in this
Но,
sense, even
считается
today,
президентом,
government is
в
flawed.
этом качестве его
But he
признают.
considers himself the
Думаю, что
president, and he is
всё-таки
recognized by the United States, all of Europe, and practically the rest of the world in such a capacity. Why not? He
договорились,
can.
он же знал об этом. Более
We
того,
negotiated with
руководитель
Ukraine in
переговорной
Istanbul.
группы,
We agreed.
Арахамия,
He was aware of this.
до сих пор
Moreover,
возглавляет,
the
фракцию,
negotiation group leader, Mr.
правящей
Arhamia
партии,
is his last name,
правящей партии.
I believe still heads the faction of the ruling party, the party of the president in the Rada.
Президента в Раде, в
He still heads the
парламенте.
presidential faction in the Rada, the
Он даже
country's
поставил свою
parliament.
подпись,
He still
говорит,
sits there.
на этом документе.
He even put his preliminary
Потом
signature on
он
the
же
document
публично
I am
на весь
telling
мир
you
заявил,
about.
мы были
But then
готовы
he publicly
подписать
stated to the
своим
whole
господин
world,
Джонсон,
we were ready to sign this
премьер-министр
document,
Великобритании,
but Mr.
отговорил
Johnson,
нас об
then
этом.
the Prime
И
Minister
сказал,
of
что
Great
лучше
Britain,
воевать с Россией,
came and
а не
dissuaded us
с
from
Россией,
doing
для того,
this,
чтобы
saying it was better to fight Russia. They would get
So here's a question about this. I know that like I don't trust Vladimir Putin, obviously, but this is what I have seen. This is what I read as well. And I want to hear the remaining 5 pro-Ukrainian guys in here that are probably here as haters to explain to me what is wrong about this position. Like, because I've heard conflicting information, people saying like, no, it wasn't Boris Johnson that like fucked up the talks at all. But then they also simultaneously say, well, why? How could you trust Putin on his word that he would maintain the conditions of the 15-point plan in Istanbul or in Turkey? And no, don't just say it's not true. I want to know, like, there's more. There's got to be more to it. Because if it's just that, like, how can you trust? Well, then why the fuck did they go to the table to begin with? Like, it's so dumb. It's like when Israel says we can't trust a fucking ceasefire with Hamas. Okay. It was widely reported here in the UK that Johnson was the one who scrupered the talks. Correct. Definitely trust issue. Not going to invade. More of a show. Mr. Not going to invade. More of a show. Okay. So if it's a trust issue, then that doesn't make sense. Because why the fuck would you go to the table with to negotiate the terms and conditions of a ceasefire with a person that you don't fucking trust? That makes no sense. Why would they do that? Something changed midway through. I don't understand it. I've always assumed wait, hold on. Oh shit. My dude outside and breathe fresh air. You often still have to negotiate with. Well, what? I mean, what's the other option? You often still have to negotiate with those you don't trust. You're just not going to show up. Okay, no, I don't think anyone is making a good argument here. At all. It doesn't make any sense. Boris is a chronic liar, not an easy person to respect in any quarter. Huh. It makes, when I look at it, it makes sense to be like, they're having a conversation. Ukraine is in a relatively decent position to negotiate, a better position than they are now, right? They put these fucking conditions in writing. It's a 15-point plan. It makes sense. There's like decent concessions on either side. Okay. And then the referendums, Hasan, referendums happen? No. Referendums did not happen As a Russian, this is one of your most infuriating takes. Bojo had nothing to do with that. The referendums happened and the reaction on them was codified at this point. No, the referendums were discussed to have happened 15 years in the future for Crimea. What referendums are you talking about? Why would they attack Kyiv to force a deal and not continue to act? Shows you the peace deal stories just cope to explain the failure to take the rest of Ukraine. They went to the table. They went to the table. They discussed a 15-point plan. The areas that Russia now has annexed in eastern Ukraine, it had not officially annexed yet. Okay. The 15-point plan was pretty smart, politically expedient, pretty smart, in my opinion, from Zelensky's perspective, who was dealing with obviously internal pressure in not conceding. This is not rumor talk. This has been widely reported. Globe heads are coping. No, I know. I know. That's why I'm saying, like, I read a lot of stuff about this negotiation, and it's not like it was Russian propaganda or some shit. This is what I saw, and what I saw was that Boris Johnson's visit basically aligned perfectly with the ceasefire conversation falling apart entirely. The Boris tank the deal is just taking agency from Ukraine to choose their path. Okay, this is what makes me want to fucking video game myself entirely, because there is no autonomy in Ukraine, okay? If Ukrainian agency was a factor in this fucking conversation, then America would be wiping out every Russian position right now with F-16s or F-35s or whatever the fuck they're using. Please stop. If Ukrainian agency mattered in this conversation from the eyes of the Western world and Western leadership, they literally would not. There would be no more Russian invasion at this point. Ukraine would be in NATO. Like, I don't know why people always bring this up and say, like, oh, it's like, you think any Western power gives a fuck about Ukrainian agency? What the fuck are we talking about? I'm sorry, guys. Like, this is laughable. Like, people legitimately still push this position over and over again about. People still legitimately push this position over and over again that, like, America's involvement in Ukraine is actually a moral one. America is on the right side of this conflict, but America's interests are not a fucking moral one in Ukraine. They have openly mentioned this. They keep saying it over and over again. It seems so naive to just, like, refuse to hear what the American politicians have openly said. This is not my analysis. This was my analysis originally. Okay. My analysis originally was, I think America is doing this as a proxy war. But now I don't have to say that as speculation, because I can just point to Elizabeth Warren or Chris Coons or Lindsey Graham or numerous other Republican and Democratic Party foreign policy apparatus members very clearly defining that it is a great return on investment for 5% of our military budget. We've been able to take out 50% of our foreign adversaries' military without a single U.S. active duty service member lost in the process. I'd say that's a really good bargain. There's also a secondary line of communication here where they've also talked about how this is all great for our military industrial complex. These are our arms deals. These are American manufacturers that are making these weapons and getting the money. 50%, what the fuck are you getting this from? Dog, it's just the Lindsey Graham quote. I'm not saying that they actually destroyed 50% of the Russian military. I'm simply saying that's what Lindsey Graham directly said. When you hear stuff like that, you have to realize that while America is technically on the right side of a conflict, siding with those who are invaded versus the invaders, right? America in Israel, Palestine, wrong side of the conflict. That much is very obvious. Okay? Israel is engaging in a genocidal campaign against Palestinians. America is firmly on the side of Israel on that situation, on that side of the conflict. Okay? America is firmly on the side of Ukraine in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That is the right side. Ukrainians are correct in wanting to defend their country. Russians, or the Russian government, or Vladimir Putin, okay, specifically, is on the wrong side. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not a just cause. You don't think Ukraine wants to defend itself and we shouldn't help because Russia is our adversary? What? No, you're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying that while America is technically aligned on the right side of this conflict since the invasion, okay, their interest and their motivation is not for honest reasons. How do you justify sides, right or wrong? Easy. The invading force is in the wrong. It's that simple. There are obviously differences throughout history. Like America going into Europe to defeat Nazis is the right thing to do. But yes, Russia is the oppressor. Russia is the aggressor. Russia is in the wrong. My point is, if you want the NATO simps reasoning, their story is that this was just a fake negotiation on the part of Russia to plan the post-Kyiv failure. Oh. Okay. I guess that's maybe a more reasonable argument. I don't fucking know. People have basically said that this is false. And it made me feel, and these are like people who pay way closer attention. People who pay way closer attention to Ukraine than me, right? I'm not a particularly smart guy, okay? But this, to me, Boris Johnson casting doubt on the possibility of a negotiated peace in Ukraine and the Ukrainian peace talks like falling apart is very different than people being like, well, how can you trust the Russians on a negotiated condition of like surrender? Those are two separate things. If you don't trust the Russians, you just don't fucking go to the table to do peace talks with them anyway. Okay? But you should engage in an honest effort to do a ceasefire. And if it doesn't work out, then you're back to square one. And square one is you blowing shit up anyway. Putin repeats nonsense claim Boris Johnson's scrupured efforts to end Ukraine invasion. You just said that, but I feel like they sold the Ukrainians a lie that they were going to get unconditional and permanent support from the Western world. Oh, this is the one. Okay. The Russian president said via translator a huge document had been prepared and approved by the head of the Ukrainian delegation before the UK prime minister had stepped in and dissuaded Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has repeated a claim that Boris Johnson scrupured negotiations for a peace settlement. During a highly anticipated sit-down interview, he put his signature and then himself. We were ready to sign it, and the war would have been over long ago. However, Prime Minister Johnson came to talk us out of it, and we missed that chance. In an interview with the Times in January, Mr. Johnson strongly denied the claims, which have been previously aired by Moscow, describing them as total nonsense of Russian propaganda. Okay, I don't trust Boris Johnson either, though. If this is just Mr. Johnson's word, then why the fuck would I trust Boris Johnson? He's an absolute baboon. Mr. Johnson asserted that during a conversation with Mr. Zelensky following the peace talks in Istanbul, he had expressed concerns about the nature of the potential agreement, but assured him the UK's unwavering support for Ukraine. He added that no peace proposal or peace agreement were possible in February and March 2022. Russia entered Ukraine solely for the sake of seizing territories, killing civilians, and overthrowing a democratic government. The former prime minister's rebuttal came following statements made by David Arahamia, the leader of the Servant of the People Party faction in Verkhovna Rada, and the head of the Ukrainian delegation in talks with Russia in November 2023. I remember this. This came out as well. Mr. Arahamia, cited by a previous visit by Mr. Johnson to Kyiv as forming part of the decision not to negotiate with Moscow in 2022. Mr. Johnson had allegedly said that Ukraine shouldn't sign anything with them at all, and let's just fight. Speaking of the proposed negotiations, Mr. Putin continued, we have never refused, and the fact that they obeyed the demand of the persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous and very sad to me. Because, as Mr. Arahamia put it, we could have stopped these hostilities with a war a year and a half ago already. But the British persuaded us, and we refused. Where's Mr. Johnson now? And the war continues. It's like, bitch, you're saying that, but you're the one who's continuing the war, for the record. Asked where he thought Mr. Johnson was, Mr. Putin laughed, replying, hell knows, I don't understand it myself. Conspiracy theories about Mr. Johnson's potential involvement in peace negotiations between two nations have been previously bandied. Okay, this article sucks dick, dude. This article sucks dick. Do you know why this article sucks dick? Because it literally openly admits that Boris Johnson did very publicly say, don't sign anything. It shows a Ukrainian head of the delegation. Why didn't they go to the fucking guy himself and be like, did Boris Johnson tell you this? What the fuck? Anyway, according to the Guardian article I sent you, Boris apparently said that because Zelensky had maximalist positions. Oh. Yeah, he said, I really don't see how the Ukrainians can easily sit down and come to some kind of accommodation. How can he negotiate with a crocodile when he's got your legs in his jaws? NATO would keep going with the strategy of supplying Ukraine with weapons to defend itself. He suggested President Zelensky had what he called a pretty maximalist position of wanting to see Russian troops expelled from their current positions in Donetsk and Luhansk, adding, on Crimea, they are not so maximalist. Johnson played down the prospects that he could persuade Modi to toughen India's stance on Ukraine, that the rest of it is Modi. Okay, this still doesn't mean that he didn't dissuade the Ukrainian envoy, or at least like feed them a lie. Because here's the thing. Can you use a British accent when talking about Boris? No, because I'm at 9 hours and I have a headache. And I'm losing it a little bit. The thing that frustrates me about this is the same position that I've brought forward time and time again. In the simplest terms, you have to always give peace a chance. Okay? All matter of war end in treaties. Okay? All matter of war end in treaties. That's how it ends, always. So when people say, oh, dude, you can't do fucking treaties with these guys. They're fucking awful. They're dogs. It's like, okay, let's say you do try to engage in a ceasefire. Okay? Let's say you try to engage in a ceasefire. Fine, great, dandy, love it. And let's say Russia doesn't follow through on the conditions of a ceasefire. Right? They keep shelling. Okay. Then what the fuck happens? You're back to square one. You were already violent before the ceasefire. You were already withstanding violence before the ceasefire. And you just go back to square one and you continue withstanding violence after the ceasefire is violated. This is what I mean. This is what is very frustrating. But then both sides deepen even more. What do you mean deepen even more? Anyway. Motherfuckers would say this makes you look weak. Yeah, you know what makes you look weak? When the manpower you have runs out and the Western world slowly but surely starts withdrawing support because they have a shiny new genocide that they actually care about. So they no longer care about your defense because they never cared about your defense at all. They cared about your defense as far as you could hurt Russia. Okay? They cared about your defense as far as they could as they could use your people to fight back against a foreign fucking adversary. Anyway, I can't finish this interview. I'm so fucking tired. And I have a headache. No. Guys, it's 9 hours. I'm at 9 hours right now. I don't think I'll be able to play the glorious. I'm not going to be able to defend the glorious Azerbaijan borders today. I know everybody was very excited for it, but I do have not one but 2 dogs that I need to take care of here. And some other shit too. God damn it. Fine, Mr. Grumpy Pants. Mr. Grumpy Pants, dude, this is like a full day we did of politics. It's just like, I'm tired, man. We did 9 hours of like nonstop maximum politics. It's not my fault though. It's because the Tucker Carlson interview dropped and it was kind of a crazy one. And I didn't realize it was going to be 2 fucking hours long. God damn it. And we didn't even get to finish it. But we will do Border Patrol tomorrow. Okay. It was a fat day. Big day. Lots of stuff that we talked about. God damn. Hopefully it was informative for you guys.